So, welcome to Estonia. My name is Maarja Mäots, and I'm moderating today's Cybercation event. Cybercation is organized by the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Estonia, together with CTF Technologies. And we aim to bring together the educational sector from the whole Nordic and Baltic countries. More general, the aim of today's event is to exchange best practices, knowledge and challenges that we meet in cyber education, and aim to find solutions how to fix them. Moreover, we want to build a stronger community among the sector, to create new networks between schools, educational organizations and governments in order to maintain the necessary supply for the human resources. That's to maintain a completely secure and integrated Nordic-Baltic region. But now, I'm giving the floor to Krister Haglund, Director of Nordic Council of Minister Office in Estonia, who actually brought today's event live. Please, Krister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario. Dear guests, participants, colleagues, friends, warmly welcome also on behalf of the Nordic Council of Ministers to Tartu and Estonia. Today we are actually making history because this is the first Cybercation meeting ever, so warmly welcome. And as we know, cybersecurity is quickly growing to be a critical aspect in all modern societies. We rely on it to have fresh drinking water, uninterrupted power supply, safe traffic, operational education, government, growing businesses, and functional financial systems, among other things. Yet companies, governments and communities lack talented people, as cybersecurity is a complex field with a high barrier for entry. Cybercrime, on the other hand, doesn't care about country borders. It has become a global phenomenon where criminals can conduct attacks on targets everywhere in the world. Our goal is to make the Nordic-Baltic region the most integrated region in the world by 2030. But this cannot be achieved without having a comprehensive pool of talented and skillful people who can help us to build secure information systems and feel safe in the cyber world as well. Our current geopolitical situation has shown that information systems have become a valuable target for all kinds of forces with malicious intent. So, therefore, our dreams for smart solutions, smooth data transfers, and paperless administration can't come true without an army of talented cyber defenders. There is a need also to reach out to young people, girls and boys, who may have an interest in cyber. And the best way doing it is through gamified training, like we are doing here today in Tartu. And of course also the education system, teachers, professors, school directors, policymakers. If we actually want to change things, we can't just deal with the kids, but have to get our message across to decision makers as well. The people with the right skills don't just pop up out of nowhere. You have to lay the groundwork for it. You have to have a plan of action, and everyone needs to have the same understanding of the issue, preferably all citizens. We have to make a conscious effort to foster cyber skills, and to weave it into the education system. We hope that Cybercation is a catalyst for closer international cooperation between education specialists, that they start putting their heads together about challenges and how to overcome them. Cyber knowledge is becoming just as important as elementary literacy. They can't be treated as separate things anymore. How to go about things online, how to construct digital systems and come up with solutions aren't things only a handful of specialists should know how to do, but should be an ordinary part of life that everyone's aware of. One of the aims of Cybercation is to share information and success stories, how to teach cybersecurity, how certain subjects are involved in national programs, what specific aims are in the field. It is important that people from the cyber education field keep in touch and share their experiences. The aim here is that you all would build a cyber education community. This way we can achieve a situation, for example, where the teachers and students from the Nordic and Baltic countries will have the same values and understanding of a secure digital world, and they can pass it on to the rest of the society. As we all know, the weakest link in the cyber world is not always the systems or the machines. It is an individual sitting behind the computer or holding the smartphone. So this is something each and everyone should be engaging. I wish you really fruitful and good discussions today, and once more, thank you so much for coming to Tartu and for participating. Thank you.
So thank you, Krister. Now it's time. I have one more organizational information for you. All you are who are watching us live from YouTube channel or our social media channel. You will have a chance to ask questions for our keynotes, because we are now continuing with our keynotes before a break. And all of you who are sitting here in the same room with us, you can find QR codes on the floor, on a on a stand. You can find them and use this QR code to send us questions for a speaker. And please, Andres, please, you are the next speaker, and please talk about what does the cybersecurity landscape look like today. So please.
Hello to everybody. My name is Andres. I'm 1 out of 5 billion plus behind the screen. Just a regular, ordinary user of internet and computers and everything what relates to it, the technology. So what's my link to the cyber? Then I became the Minister of Entrepreneurship and IT back in January 21. Then cyber for me was something, okay, this is a niche business. There are good people who are dealing with it. But that is not something what is really burning on a table, or is, for that matter, keeping me awake during the night. When I got my first brief, I understood that my view of the world is completely wrong. This world is hostile. It relates to always 5+ billion people, which is almost 2/3 of a global population. And for many, it is something what, okay, somebody else is taking care of it until you get into the accident. But then usually it is already way too late. So if we just look on some of the numbers or the facts, there are 4.7 billion people using social media platforms. 6 largest platforms have users more than 1 billion. Facebook alone actually has almost 3 billion users. These people spend on average 2.5 hours each day online. And I think a question to ask is how much these 5+ billion people are aware about the risks, about the cyber, about what could actually happen if they click on a wrong link, or if their passwords are primitive, because as it was mentioned in the opening speech, the biggest risk is a human. It's not the technology. Cybercrime is measured in trillions, so it's extremely lucrative business for those who are on the dark side. Makes it extremely attractive to test and try. As we talk here about the Nordic-Baltic community, one example what didn't touch us, but did touch a lot people in Sweden, was successful attack to the systems of Kaseya, which cooperative retail chain used in Sweden. Several hundred stores closed for a few weeks. Reason very simple, their software running the cashier desks didn't work. Nothing to blame Coop, but their dependence on a critical service provider turned out to be a vulnerability. Irish healthcare system was compromised. They didn't pay ransomware, but spent 100 million plus in rebuilding the system. Not cheap. And of course, now with Russia's war in Ukraine, it is very, very evident and clear that cyber has become a conventional tool for authoritarian regimes to pursue their agenda. Part of a toolkit in conventional war, but also a tool to manipulate elections or try to manipulate elections, to use propaganda to spread false facts. These are all elements of a landscape we are walking with 5+ billion people globally. Day before yesterday, there was a successful DDoS attack on the Senate of Poland. So their activity was quite a bit disturbed. And even more successful attack on a parliament in Slovakia. So they actually had to stop the session, and they are going to reconvene first week of November. Was there any money behind? Honestly, I doubt. But was there any state interest behind? Quite so. So everybody could only guess who is behind it. And also, I think we need to really appreciate the significance of cyber in keeping our normal daily activities running. So the resilience of critical ICT infrastructure, or for that matter, banking, energy, transportation, is all extremely relevant. So this is the landscape. My second point is about why these hackers, either criminal or state-sponsored, why do they are successful? One reason is good or bad old habits, weak passwords. Again, everybody, I think, or almost everybody, has learned it, has been told, but okay, well, it doesn't touch me. So I'm good with my password as it is, and I don't really pay much of attention. So using more complex passwords, using multi-factor authentication is something what everybody should do. Are they actually doing? Well, probably not, because otherwise there would be much less of successful attacks. And even, I think, in the exercises what IT companies, the big ones, have run in their own houses, oftentimes it turns out that actually people do click on the wrong links. And that's just part of a human nature. So it's also about the ability to respond and to plan. And of course, the second point is fairly straightforward. Hacking is cheap, protecting is expensive, and it's way asymmetrical. I mean, the cheapest ways to hack start from 50 euros, I have been told. Obviously, with 100 euros, you don't defend anything. So the defense end of a scale is quite bigger in terms of financial value, but equally in terms of people you need, in terms of organization you need to set up. So these are the real challenges. And again, as the Irish hospitals example demonstrates, if you don't do it, then you are going to pay a lot of money. So cyber hygiene, really important. Like I think COVID was something what really reminded us the importance of hygiene, and people became much more careful. Washed their hands or disinfected their hands, were wearing masks and so on. Are we still as careful today? I doubt. So we tend to tilt back to the usual setting where we have been kind of living for most of our of a life. So I think it's also a matter of discipline that you actually do it. And in fairness, I think many companies or service providers also push you as a client to be more cyber hygiene aware. So that's really, I think, one of the key points. And there was recently also the cyber attacks or successful cyber attacks in Albania. So they actually penetrated some 14 months ago into the systems before we actually attacked. Again, I think a safe way of approaching from any organization's point of view is you just assume that somebody is already in. And then you can start thinking what you can do if this person who is in actually does some actions so that you are capable in reacting and protecting your assets, the privacy of people. Because I think that's also something what really is a key. What people are most concerned is all sorts of data leaks, and that is also a credibility vis-a-vis the system in general. So the question on this Albanian example is also what is a wake-up call at the level of politicians, at the level of companies' management, and so on and so forth. And this brings me to risk management topic. We in Estonia had our wake-up call back in 2007. Was the first cyber attack against a sovereign. I think there was a lot of coverage back in a time. But I think a question to ask is, was it a wake-up call also for all other countries in the world? Or was it more a wake-up call primarily for us, then of course the professionals in the field, but was it really a wake-up call for the rest of the world? And that I'm not sure. It certainly wasn't. I mean, each and one needs their own wake-up call, and it's better to have it sooner rather than later. But in order to deal with the risks and take some actions, you first need to be able to define what these risks are, then to measure, and then to manage. which is again the basic thing what any risk management textbook teaches you. And as most of my professional career I have spent in finance, so it's very clearly defined in the banking that for a specific residual risks you take, you always need to allocate certain amount of capital. I don't see much of a difference in cyber conceptually on that point of view. So the more we can do and the better we can do risk management as an individual, as a company, and ultimately as a sovereign, the stronger we emerge. And again, in the risk management, you need to assess, so what's the probability? And many conversations I have had, it's oftentimes ending with, okay, well, we see here, yes, we need to do a patch and fix this vulnerability, but we can't really do it in the middle of a week because then we need to have some downtime in our service. I would rather do it over weekend. But weekend may be too late. There was a specific example where ransom invoice arrived 48 hours after the vulnerability was discovered. So again, a question for the management, the leadership, so what I prioritize. And oftentimes it is something what the cyber is seen as a cost. It's something what, okay, I can postpone. We do first the sales, or we do first the new services, some other things. But getting into the defense is something what we can do sometimes later. And that paradigm, I think, has to change. Otherwise, we will become just increasingly vulnerable as a global society. So in this risk management thinking, it's good to define for everybody and ask this question. So what is my wake-up call? Is this wake-up call the event of today, which hopefully educates, and certainly I think most people who are here are well above the average in terms of understanding, appreciation of the risks. The key question is actually about these people who are not here, who are not watching, and who think that, okay, cyber, like I did before becoming a minister, okay, this is something what the professionals take care of. I don't have to worry. That is something what I think in the field of education, what you are mostly in, it's a huge task and important task to deliver. So my fourth and almost last point, or second last point, is about methodology and benchmarking. We have been talking about a lot in different settings. So yes, many people agree, most people agree, we need to invest in cybersecurity. But how do we measure what qualifies as an investment in cybersecurity? This is something we need to go through. Find a common methodology. It doesn't have to be 500 pages. I think it could easily be a handful of pages, but just sort of a broad principles so that we can compare apples and apples. And then we need a benchmark. What is a best practice for a given profile? If it is a one-man micro company, obviously, I mean, nobody is going to ask you to define your cyber defense strategy, to allocate a certain amount of resources. I mean, you rely on professional service providers. But the more you grow in size and complexity, technology intensity, and again, if we think about the green transition, the innovation, what we are seeing, the need to digitalize, I mean, these numbers will be in trillions what are invested globally. And if they are not matched by commensurate investment in cyber defense, we just make the business opportunities for criminals far bigger. Because we all depend that the services work, and obviously for criminals, This is just a lucrative way of finding money. So this is something we need to do. There is a good rule of thumb. If you spend 1/10 of your IT budget on cyber defense, then or capabilities or resilience, it's probably reasonably good. Maybe not enough for everybody, but most certainly for most. And as I see, the clock is almost running out of time, or I am running out of time, not the clock. Then I have also one ask for everybody here, and this ask is very simple. Be evangelists, talk to your friends, to your family, spread the word and increase the cyber awareness. This, I think, is what everybody of us can do. Doesn't take a big effort, but it has a big impact. Then those who are here from Estonia, State Information System Authority, RIA, is actually hiring. There is a great opportunity for young people or others who are interested in the field to give your own personal contribution to make our digital society safer. Those of you who have to go to the defense forces to do your service, Cyber Command of Defense Forces is going to increase significantly the number of recruits in the Cyber Command, an excellent opportunity for young people to do the service and to get a great professional experience and be ready, prepared for the rest of their life to do business, to spread the word, to teach, to do whatever. So I will stop here. Thank you very much. And if in 23 seconds I can answer one question, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really interesting presentation. I have a question, but I write via online questionnaire format. So, but one organizational note before I ask this question is that if you have a question, please raise your hand here, and you will get the microphone for a question. But going to this question, how do you see we can grow the number of people with strong cybersecurity skills in our region?
Long term, starting cyber education already at school from a basic level, from the first classes. Short term, we need to be competitive and attractive for the talent to stay here and for the talent to come here. This is a tough global competition, but being one of the most digitally advanced societies, having the great companies, having a great crowd. I mean, those of you who haven't been yet downstairs to see the Cyber Battle, please do so. It's really cool. So this is the source for the talent and again, advocate young people or people who have interest in switching the career to pick this path. You don't have to be a computer scientist. I mean, you just need to be curious, willing to conquer the next summit, and then everything falls into place. A good communicator, or great communicator actually, or good is also good.
Good, great. Both are very good. So do you have questions here? I also have one question. Here, where I can see it. Yeah, please, the microphone. All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Minna. I'm from Finland. You noticed that people usually think that somebody else is taking care of my cyber things, and these issues doesn't touch me. For example, issues related to passwords. So I'm interested, how do you see the future of awareness and cyber security education in your country? How do you see the direction?
I think we are seeing increasingly more awareness raising at schools and in general. But again, for example, I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Estonia, every morning you get the news about traffic accidents. It has been historically so all the time. Every morning you get it. Then State Information System Authority, also every morning, makes a short summary about the cyber incidents in the last 24 hours. And you guess, is it broadcasted? No, but could be. At least sort of maybe not daily, but in terms of weekly. So this is something we really need to push. It has to, or conversely, if there is a major accident, that usually shakes up, and then people start to move. But in general, I think we are moving. Could it be faster? Yes, but let's make a collective effort and let's talk about the topic.
Thank you.
So I don't see any hands, but I have this intriguing question. If I have this chance, I have to use it. So I know something about digital literacy. I know something about literacy rate in general. I know something about cyber hygiene, and I understand cyber hygiene should be like normal hygiene. So what we should do, because with this, that we want all the nation, our people to be like highly digital literacy. But let's take these countries, for example, who literacy rate is 20% of society, but they use daily based, they use internet, the society is like 50. So how to target these groups? What we should do? Is it like a campaign based, like we have done? We have been successful in campaigning this seatbelt. If you drive a car, please put on seatbelt. I think, what your ideas about this?
You ask about what we can do in Estonia or in more broadly and globally?
No, more broader, yeah, because this is something that should help us to be better at cyber hygiene.
I think globally, of course, when we help the countries who have low literacy rates or who are sort of in the early developing phase, it would make a lot of sense to integrate the cyber awareness also part of curricular. And then, I mean, some things are not really sophisticated. I mean, you can have sort of that your phone has always a password. For that, you need to know the numbers. And you shouldn't put 1, 2, 3, 4, not your year of birth, but you can be a little bit more sophisticated. So it's, and then using the two-way authentication, I think, is also something what you don't have to be extremely literate to handle it. So, but obviously, if the overall level of education is low, then I think it would be forced to expect that these people are all terribly cyber aware. So just boosting overall education, I think, is always important. Also, if you think back the history of Estonia, it has been the same thing, sort of raising the literacy rates, if you go back to really 19th century, and then getting where we are today. So education is, I think, actually the key. A simple answer, one word: education.
Okay, thanks for saying that. Thank you for presentation. Thank you for questions. Now I give a floor to Greta, and we are going to Norway. And Greta will show us cyber crisis education and training. So please.
Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you for being invited to this conference. My name is Greta Østby. I'm in the final stages of doing a PhD in information security. And Stuart Kowalski, who's seated here, is my professor, and I have a co-professor called Basil Katt. I have this picture of me. This is the picture of me is not maybe the interesting part. The interesting part is at the beginning of this PhD journey. This picture was taken in the basement at NTNU in Gjøvik. And as you can see, there's a lot of wires hanging there. And this was the first stages of building a cyber range at NTNU. The last slides shows a picture of how it is today. My background is that I have a background from the army. I went to the officer school in the Signal Corps, which today is, of course, the cyber defense in Norway. I have a Master of Science in Business, so I worked several years in private companies. And then when I got my son when I was 38, I went back to public services and worked in the civil defense. And that's where I met Professor Kowalski, and I started this journey doing a PhD. So I'm 50 years old now, and I'm going to talk to you today about learning artifacts. There were things here in the previous discussion, was how can we make people learn these things? And there are different people we need to train, and I'm going to talk about how we train people at a master's program in information security at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Let me see. What we say is that there's a need for profound change in organizational environments due to cybersecurity. And I have worked a lot on exercises for many, many years, and how we train people, how we have learning goals, how we have learning artifacts in exercises. And but there's still this thing that the experience from the exercises might just be within the team. And how can we, that are trained, and how can we make, for instance, a management group to take those experiences back to the organization so the organization also will learn? And we have started out now, and what I'm going to present today is based on what we have done in this course. But for 1.5 weeks ago, I also had the same type of exercise for the director group at the biggest hospital trust in Norway, together with the operational team from Sykehuspartner, which is called the CERT for the hospital trust. So we were able to bring them together. The exercise didn't. Some of it went very well. Some of it didn't go so well. But this is what we need to figure out: how do we do this, and how do we train people? So this exercise we do every year. I will run it for the 3rd time now next Friday. We build up a social-technical scenario, and we have learning measurements, which is practical deliveries, where the students get feedback on that. And the background is, of course, there are a lot of templates around the world now how to build a good exercise. And in Norway, we have the Directorate for Civil Protection, who have a variety of exercises where they suggest we should do it this and this way. And then we have, for instance, FEMA, or the Homeland Security organization in the United States. We say that, okay, we have different types of exercises, and a full-scale exercise is what we maybe covers everything that we need in an exercise. And then you have ENISA, you have NATO, you have a lot of different templates on how to train and do exercises. But we also have these theoretical foundations for crisis management. We need to combine all of these things. And often crisis management, it's this C3 thing about command, control, and communication. And what has grown the latest year is this cognition, that you should be able to think what can happen if, for instance, a cyber incident or a cyber crisis happen in the society. And this cognition, to be able to see and understand what happens, that's a sort of a next step. And how do we approach this type of training? And the students, as said, they need to deliver something as part of their training, not just discuss, but also deliver something. As there are a lot of there are people here in the academia, I will also tell a little bit about the research approach we had. because we have used the design science research in information security. And that is that we are aware of the problem, of course, and we have some suggestions. So beforehand we started this, we had some ideas, and we started out based on several years of experiences running crisis exercises, and we see how will this be different in cybersecurity. And then we suggested it, and we have run it 2 years in a row, and we a third time now, and we're trying it out for organizations. So we have sort of an artifact now, and this is what I'm going to present to you. As I have background working all these years, it was a little bit harsh to get back into academia. But as my vice professor here has told me, that what I'm doing is actually using what I've learned, and I have what they call a naive inductivist approach to this, where I use where we look at a case and we observe how it goes, and then we, based on this generalized things, and we create theories actually. The inductivist approach is, induction is you have a case, then you figure out what is the fact, and then you create the rule. What we also do as a approach is a social technical backward design. The backward design is based on what Yale are doing, where they say that, okay, these are the learning goals, and then we have activities. We always look at the learning goals first. What do we want to bring to the students or to the management team or whoever? What do we want them to learn? And then we make activities. But as we work in a social technical context, we say we need the people as well. We need the people, and how do we train people just as much as how do we secure the systems? Then we can train them based on different types of activities, and we hopefully will meet the learning goals. This was our idea. And then we figure out an artifact, I will talk now about the artifact, the findings, and how we have evaluated this. And the artifact is based on what we call triple loop learning. The normal path of education is very often that we have this single loop learning when we stand there and we teach and we talk to the students and we discuss, and then maybe we have a case and they get the case and they work on the case, and that's sort of it. That's normal. But then also in this case we have this triple loop learning at the end of the exercise, where they are allowed to reflect upon what they have done and also look into how can they use what they have learned and provide exercises for others. They are allowed to be critical, they are allowed to be sensitive, they are allowed to say that, okay, this was stressful for me. What do I learn from that? And how can I make others learn from that? So this was sort of the way we did this work. And I'll show you the results now. There are some minor things first. That, of course, at a university you have some regulations. There are, when I set up an exercise at a course for one date, I also have to have another date. So this means that I have to provide 2 different scenarios. So there are things at any university that are practical. And I also had lectures beforehand. And this is because we started out with this in the midst of the corona situation, we decided to do it digitally. But I think that has worked out quite well, actually. And there's group deliveries, and it's around 10 persons per group. And we use the learning system we have at NTNU, but it's required attendance. And there are in the timeline, deadlines that, for instance, at 11, you should deliver a press release, a draft for a press release, for instance. I have help from 2 students' assistants, and everything is going on in the system, but yeah, that's a good thing, and we evaluate afterwards. The number of students in the courses are increasing. The first year, we had 70 students for the first exercise and 13 for the second. And the second year, we had 120 students for the first exercise and 10 for the second. And you can see when we have the evaluation afterwards, there's a rather high number of answers. The students' experiences with the exercises was also interesting. How many of these students have actually attended exercises before? So we looked into that, and we could see that a quite high number of students had participated in exercises. And we also looked into the lectures. How relevant did they find the lectures? And for most of the lectures, the first year, you could see that most of them found it relevant. Some found it very relevant, and even on huge relevance. But this is also, I could see that in the discussions that some of these students, they are experienced students, and they have been attending a lot of exercises, and then they don't find these lectures very interesting. Then what I did, I create a discussion scenario based on how to create discussion exercises, where there is a first input with exercise instruction, with roles, what type of roles they should have, a background information from a newspaper, some ICT regulation at a university, that's what we did. We had a scenario introduction with a local newspaper story. The next input is the same, delivery instruction, and some posts on the wall at the Security Operations Center, content of a call, another newspaper story, the final scenario, delivery instructions, and the actual situation. Because this is something I have experienced from a lot of years doing exercises. Don't end an exercise until you have sort of a clearance on what has happened, what has really happened, what is the situation. The 4 deliveries were that they should do a top-down brief, a traditional top-down brief, as you do it as a leader in a crisis. A bluff, that's bottom line up front report. What is the most important thing that has happened in a situation? You also need to deliver a management summary, and you also need to deliver a draft for a press relief. And then we had this evaluation afterwards where we see that, okay, what did you find that you learned from the exercise? And we put out a lot of things that we know they could maybe learn something about some of these things, and we knew that also some of the things it wasn't a part of the learning goals. For instance, logistics, which is important in a crisis, but we knew that there were no logistics in this case. But still, somebody thought they learned a little bit about it. But what we saw that the learning goals, these learning goals, they were met very much doing this. And especially, we saw this in the discussion afterwards. And a part of the evaluation was not only this written, the online digital evaluation, but we had this on-time hot wash session, where we first had 2 questions which meets the feeling part of a hot wash session and the thinking part. And we ask questions, use 3 words to describe what you think about the scenario, and use 3 words to describe how you felt about during the exercise, how you felt. And you can see that some of the words are, when you think about feeling, is that stressed, confused, uncertain, stressed, challenging, interesting, uncertain, stressed, confused, and unsure, engaged, and curious. So all of these things are things that I have been a crisis manager for many years, and this is typically in the beginning of a situation. This is what is very recognizable, and then you have what you think about it. It's realistic, interesting, relevant, interesting, challenging, confusing, and relevant. And this is also things we wanted to meet in the evaluation phase of it, the triple loop. And then we also had a couple of questions which are also a part of the thinking stage in the HotWash session. And we talked about what is the most important thing you learned from the exercise, and what will you bring forward after the exercise. A lot of these people are working in organizations on a daily basis. And we also find a lot of things that the most common things to say that they said is it's important that we know our roles. And it's important that the scenario is realistic and that communication is essential. And what they will bring forward is, they often talk about what will the incident response plan look like. A lot of them say, oh, I actually don't know what it looks like in my organization. And then we had the evaluation questionnaire with input from the students, what they wanted to improve. And have done some improvement, for instance, changing and being more clear about what their role should be. And yeah. And what I've done now is done the same things in exercises with real organizations. And this is what I will now write and talk about in when I'm delivering my thesis. So, this last picture, here you see how it looks like at the Cyber Range today. And this is the community we work in, and yeah, hope that people will come and visit us at the Norwegian Cyber Range at NTNU Gjøvik. Thank you so much.
So, thank you, Greta. Do we have questions from audience? Here is one question.
Hello, so my name is Ulrich and I'm working as a professor here at the university. Thanks for sharing your results, but there were kind of a lot of scenarios you were referring to. Can you kind of give your kind of most successful scenario, most engaging scenario, or most successful crisis to engage people? So can you tell us a little bit out of a concrete case that you had really huge engagement with the people who were taking part in it?
Yeah, I had 2 different scenarios in these exercises. And the first one is that there is an insider at the university who have access to administration data and then are stealing data from the university. And this is going out then in the newspapers. The other one is more of an exfiltration attack, where you have somebody who have implanted some stealth implants at the Directorate of Civil Protection, and they were supposed to be the IT management there. It's very much the same setup for both scenarios, but it's quite different scenarios. But I had to have 2 different because of the regulations. So, but what we have done also is that we have developed this thing called øvelse.no, which is 12 different information security scenarios where you can go into those and you can go step through steps through different exercises. I don't know if you heard about exercise in a box in England. It's a type of the same content of it. So there's a lot of scenarios, but I think that the insider threat for an organization is important, and to understand how that can be, because that's all what it's all about. People get on the inside. And the other thing is the advanced persistent attacks, which is also that you get on the inside. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Greta. I think this is a good start for a later network.
Yeah.
Can continue this. But now we have to proceed, and we are going to Sweden. Please, Stuart, floor is yours. And we are going to hear about social technical design. So, let's see.
Thank you very much. The first time I met a hacker, I was 5 years old. And for those that don't know the math, that's about 60 years ago. It was my father. He was a farmer. And we used to get the energy bill on IBM cards. They called them IBM cards. And he would take the cards and he would punch holes in them so the computer could not read them, because he said these machines were going to take over everything. And then he later on he moved from the town and we moved into the city, and he's working for John Deere. So anybody knows the farming industry, we say the farmer bought the farm, you spend all your money on the equipment and you don't really make money until the end. So he went over to the other side, John Deere. So I'm working on the other side now, in a sense. I will be talking about hybrid cyber ranges and how we design them into social technical design. So a lot of people know about cyber ranges, but we're taking the next step in Sweden and Norway to design hybrid cyber ranges. I'm a professor in many places. I'm a visiting professor at the in information security in Skövde, which is a town in Sweden. And they have something called Privacy, Information and Cybersecurity Center. So right now, even though I'm wearing a Norwegian sweater and I work at NTNU, and I'm Greta's thing, I'm representing what's going on in Sweden and the things we are doing there. I'll be talking about why we need to, when we're thinking about this problem, why we need to not only talk about security, why we need to talk about social technical system design. Who are doing social technical system design in the world to understand this? What are hybrid cyber ranges as opposed to cyber ranges? And how we're developing, testing, and measuring. As the minister mentioned, I always talk about the students. I say model, measure, and then manage. If you can't measure it, you can't research it, etc. I talk about how you do that. But one of the problems we have is that we're doing measurements and we have the wrong model. I'm going to get into that later. One of the models I'm going to give you now is a model. Sorry. I have a long background in this field. As I said, I started doing my first lecture I gave in EDP security. I don't know how many people know what EDP, that means electronic data processing security, was in 1983. So I guess that's about 39 years. I guess that's hard on the math. So I've been sort of doing this for a bit too long. And one of the things I know about this industry is that unfortunately we're driven a lot by hype, or as we call it in the business, bullshit. And these are curves that you use, and these are professional curves. This is a curve taken from Gardner. And both our education, research, innovation, and most of the things we do in society today are driven by hype. And this is basically what Cybercation is about, and what this competition is about, is how do we hype things. And to understand the hype curve is that you start off as you have visibility. You want to make things visible. You have technical triggers. And then you get a peak of expectations. And as you go on in time, you get the trough of disillusionment, and then get the slope of environment. And in the end, you're actually starting to make money on it, or you're starting to do things. So this is the way businesses work and the industry. And these hype curves are driven by what we call social technical regimes. I won't get into do that, but I was working for large companies, and we would sort of figure how would we deal with competitors. So I worked at Ericsson, and I also worked later on until I worked at Huawei. So we have that aspects about that too, and again into how the big companies are planning these things in a sense. Here's an example of a hype curve from 2003. I actually used this hype curve when I was the product manager at Ericsson. Is this it now? Here you see the different technologies when it comes to identity and authentic. And we talked about two-factor and strong authentication using tokens, etc., etc. This down here. As I say, this was from 2023, and we model in all the different technologies. And at the time I got into the business, it was called single sign-on. I remember one of my customers saying Ericsson has invented a new tool. It's called multiple single sign-on. We can get into the joke about that because often you will see that single sign-on developed this way. So these are actual hype curves that are used in business. Again, to understand what's going on here is that I've been in this business 40 some years. As I said before, I started off as a police officer looking at this stuff. I did one computer crime issue. I used to be the risk and security manager for Ericsson Global Services. I've taught at about 10 different universities. I worked in banks, equipment manufacturers, digital and all these different companies. And for 2 years, I was the cyber security architect for Huawei in Shenzhen. Now, what's the difference between working in industry and university? Now I'm a professor. In an industry, you're given complex questions and you have to give simple solutions. In university, often you start off with simple solution. You have to make it complex enough to confuse professors so you can get your thesis published, etc. So this is me in Lahore, Pakistan in 2008. That's me right there. I had to do the telecom security policy for Pakistan. And guess how many hours was given as consultant to do it? 40 hours. There it is. You can actually download it. We did it. And it was an interesting situation. This room here is right next to the Marriott Hotel. That was the one that the Taliban blew up, whatever. So I know it's security in this one. We can talk later. And I built it on something called the security value chain. We don't actually say this in the document, but it has to do with how you model security for a nation. All right. So as I said, what I'm going to be giving you now is a complex situation between what is simple, a complex problem, and perhaps maybe a complex solution. As I say, complex solutions, to understand it pedagogically, these type of issues have gone up in, as I said before, I talked about the School of Stockholm. I did my degree in information security or IT and security in 1994 at Stockholm University. And right now I feel like the old man in the room. I don't know how many people know about the conflict between Plato and Aristotle when it comes to teaching. It was the School of Athens. Plato said, teach them how to think first, and Aristotle said, teach them how to do first. Right now you're basically taking the Aristotelian view in terms of educating them. You're trying to say, okay, learn how to hack first, and then we teach them how to defend, whatever. And then, of course, we have the different. And as I say, this educational pedagogical conflict has been going on since the School of Athens, whatever. And unfortunately, I'm the old man in the room, and I'm saying teach them how to think first. And of course, there's other people in the room right now who say make them do things first and then think later. We had a beer over this yesterday with one of the teachers here. But as I say, the point is one of the problems we have today is a society is driven by something fancy called technological determinism instead of social constructivism. I won't bore you with a philosophical debate about this. But how do you deal with this problem about people understanding what is technological determinism versus social constructivism? As I say, I work at part-time as a adjunct professor in Skövde, and they develop a platform where we involve triple loop, where we're involving government, academia, and industry in terms of research, education, and innovation. So this is what we call a triple helix. And we have projects and activities going on there. So this is promotion for Skövde, where we're designing these things. And when I'm lucky, in a sense, I move between Sweden and Norway, and I take the best of Norway, and I leave the worst of Sweden, and I move back and forth between these two nations and steal with pride, as we say in the business. If you want, I have publications on this. This is a publications I made about the educational program. I helped them set up a master's program, and this is a video presentation. You can download it. Where I have different videos where I'm helping them set up pedagogically their master's program in information security. It's called Spiraling Out of Control, and I'm referring to a Cartesian dialogue system. You can download this paper, and it's whatever, and how we do these things. And these are videos where I interview them. And this student here is one of my master's students. He's a specialist in social engineering, and basically he said, if you go watch the video, he said, what do we have to do with cybersecurity education? He said, you have to make it fun. So in a sense, how do you make it fun? That's why my doctoral is doing that. And that's, you can read it how we're trying at in Skövde to make our master's program fun. I took the program from the beginning. There were 5 students, and now we have 50 students in the program over a 3-year period. So I guess we made it fun enough. Actually, it's making more work for us because, you know, as professors, we don't get paid by the student. So it's actually more fun that we're 5 students than 50 students, but I guess for the university it's different because marking 15 exams and 5 exams is not. Marking 15 exams is not fun. So I guess we make it fun for the students and tough for the... As Greta's course went from, I guess, when she took over the course that I had and went from, I think, 20 students, and now she's teaching 150 students. Thank you, Greta. And I'm not, actually, so that's... So basically we have this Cartesian model. I don't know about Descartes. It was the Queen of Sweden that killed Descartes. He moved him up there and he died in Stockholm from the cold. And he had this model where he makes a Cartesian system of it, and he divide up the pedagogical curriculum problem into teaching. In this case, we talk about IT security, and here we have information security. And the point in terms of spiral learning is how do you move between these things? So basically the pedagogical model is you want to be able to place a student anywhere in one of these quadrants, and they can jump to this quadrant, to this quadrant, to this quadrant, and then you have to decide how they should spiral around that and what the pedagogical goal is. And we have, in the paper and in the video, we discuss how you do this and what are the... In education, there's something called threshold factors. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. I'm seeing everybody know. These are things that once the student learns it, they can't think a different way. So say in cryptography, you have the Kirchhoff's principle, where you assume when you're designing the cryptograph that the enemy will always figure out the algorithm. Your only protection is in the key. These are certain threshold factors that you have to learn and teach them, and you want the students to learn these things. I see someone nodding, so they know about Kirchhoff, and these are old things. Show them how it's a system first. Teach them to think about systems thinking first. It's a debate that we could go on, and we can discuss this later on, what is the best way forward. Now, there is a curriculum, international curriculum that I participated in. It's called the ACM, IEEE, IFIPS curriculum, a bunch of people getting together, and we look at these different aspects, and we see that the minister mentioned this about if you're going to have this in a curriculum, you have to have risk management, human factors, ethics, policies, laws. And one of the things I got into the curriculum was this concept here. We talk about, okay, so these are the classic ones you have to teach in terms of learn about confidentiality, integrity, and variability. And then, of course, you have risk. And then you have these 2 terms called adversarial thinking and systems thinking. So this is an international curriculum. You can download it. It's all for free. You can see how the international curriculum designed. It's very detailed and gives the information. As I say, I've been in this field for a long time, and this is they had a curriculum before, and this is not new, as a lot of people are suggesting. We've been doing it, but just not doing it well enough, I guess, obviously, since given the security situations we have today, we haven't really succeeded. As I say, I did this way back when, and was hired by the Swedish government to model the United States, the Swedish military actually, to model the United States way back in 1989, I was hired there, and I made a model of United States, then I modeled the United States, and I, as a police officer, asked the questions, do computer security models model computer crime? The answer is no. So basically, you know, how we protect things and how we break things don't seem to be aligned. I don't know why, but they're not aligned. And we have academic proof to do that too. So I started off by modeling the world. And what I found when I was doing the modeling of the world, that in order to control the world to model correct, you have to look at something called social technical gaps. And you can read about this in this one. And going back, a lot of people, in the 80s, we used to have something called the Bella-Pardo model, the Biba model. I was working with the Orange book and all these things, so I've been here a bit too long. And basically, we had a paradigm crisis in the 80s. The government, US military was spending tons of money and not getting secure software, so they developed something called the Orange Book, which is a standard in security. And I say that's why the Swedish military asked me if they should design this and whether we should use this, and I did that for them. And we did it. And of course, in the 80s, we had a paradigm crisis in information security, and now we still have a paradigm crisis. The crisis is going on, but and how are we going to be dealing with this crisis? A lot of people don't know about, but interesting enough, MITRE Corporation, the RAND Corporation, we were looking at this crisis in the 80s, 85, and they produced a book called Security Models. And what's interesting about this, if you read it, they say that computer security engineers, the ones doing these type of things, have a different approach to reality. They say computer security models are engineering models, giving them somewhat more freedom than models used in physical science. In physical science, reality comes first, and one uses a model that makes predictions about the physical events and measures. If the prediction fails, the model is wrong. In engineering, the model comes first. The engineer decides what the system ought to do and then constructs a system that does it. If the system's output does not match the model, the system is wrong, not the model. So we haven't designed poor information security systems, it's that we are wrong. Basically, this is the model of computer security that we designed today. And of course, we have to spend a lot of money investing, educating everybody to do this. So basically, what we have is a car industry that every morning you have to go out and check the oil physically to make sure that you can drive the car. This is what we designed. This is what the industry has produced for us. And this is the model that we're supposed to do. So we're going to have to educate everybody to drive insecure cars and make sure they check the engine, etc., etc. They have to know what oil pressure is, what's going on in order for the car to do. So that's the model that we have today. That's why we're in a crisis today. Again, a paradigm crisis. A lot of people don't know it. How many people here see a duck? Okay, both see both. Good. I guess we have to see both, right? So that's what's going on. We have a social problem. It's a duck. We have a technical solution, hyper rabbit. Just move quickly. Come on. We have to have more technology, better technology. Move. I'm late for a very important date. And a social technical, duck and move quickly. These are the answers to our problem here. So social technical, duck and move quickly. Now, we have paradigm crisis before. I have 2 minutes. I've been going on here now, but if everybody knows, beforehand in the 15th century, if you're a good scientist at university, you would be modeling something called retrograde motion. These are complex situations that explain why Mars goes the wrong way at night. It has something retrograde motion. But what we have to do is go over to this situation where beforehand we had it that technology, do we have a technology-centered university or a human-centered university? So right now, we have technology and we as social systems have to go around the technology, or should we put the people first and then have the technology go around us? Today we're in the situation where, like we had 500 years ago, we sort of thought that the Earth was the center of the universe, and then we moved around it, and this guy named Copernicus, another Pole, whatever, had a problem with that. He sort of got excommunicated. I guess it's something to do with my Polish blood getting me in trouble all the time. So we have this business about social technical. It's a way forward. It's a whole discipline in that. And I brought Greater in. We run a conference on this. We actually ran a conference on social technical analysis here in Tallinn in 2019. And basically, this is one of the deans before that said that all the world is made up of trust, pixie dust, by well-educated or poorly educated social technical systems diviners. And that's our choice. What are we going to be doing? Everybody knows that. We have the crisis. We know about that. We have the gap. And I have 45 seconds left. So this is the situation we have at hand. How to best our money, how to fill the gap. Do we want to get a bunch of specialists, or do we want to develop a bunch of generalists? We have to decide where we want the pyramid. Which way do you want the pyramid, and where are we going to be spending the money? As I say, we're spending the money both ways now. This is a good slide here. I went to Norway. I said, you got a bunch of good climbing walls, which is great for your people to be healthy, but you're drowning in data. You need better pools. So we created the Norwegian Cyber Range. And we brought in the Prime Minister, and that's Greta running the exercise with the Prime Minister. We showed, okay, how are you going to defend Norway? And she did it. and then deciding on this one again. And we created the cyber range where we develop and have exercises at all three levels, at the societal level, the digital value chain level, and the cyber infrastructure level. So we develop this, and we have the cyber range where we run exercises and competitions at all these different levels. We run competitions societal level called the 912 Challenge. We have hackathons in dealing with digital value chain, and we could participate in the European Cybersecurity Challenge and have students doing that. So we're using games, etc. to do this. I want to finish on one last slide. Is what we have to look at as a society, whatever, is that, okay, we need seminars, we need workshops, we need the roles of games, and we as a community here should be designing our exercises, whatever, to help build this staircase so I could take a lecture, whatever, and use it and put it into a game. I can take a drill and put it into the game. But as this community, if we keep going this staircase to security, we should design our exercises, Greta's exercises and my exercises, whatever, we could share with everyone, we could test them, and we could build this staircase where we can divide it up. So the goal of this one together is to get you to participate. You can look at our exercises. We will share them with you if you request it. And what I run are something called mega games, where we test all these things together, societies, etc. We bring in individuals that know nothing about cybersecurity. We bring in people off the street, whatever, and we run these mega games. So we run a society where we do these attacks. And here's an example of a mega game that we ran last week in Iceland. I'm over time. So to understand what a mega game is we take... Why's everybody laughing at me? It's good that you're laughing, whatever, yeah. But I see I have no time, whatever, it's going red. So the point is, I think before, and I think the major thing I want to bring across in terms of our community is this. Is we have to have this staircase. We have to build blocks and bricks together. When I was the chief security architect in Ericsson, I said to the manager, the people that have more money than brains, I said to them, I cannot build secure buildings with insecure bricks. And we cannot develop a community that teaches one thing about competition, etc., but we don't develop to work as teams. We have to make sure that we have these blocks, these bricks that we can interchange with each other and build it so that you get the cybersecurity expertise you need in Estonia, that we need in the Baltic states. So I'm asking you to help me build a brick. We used to call the Ericsson mobile phone, I don't know if you know, when I was working on it, we called it the brick, you know that. It didn't help us much because we had a phone that lasted like 20 years, and Nokia built a phone that lasted 3 years, and guess who won? But I still think we need secure bricks here. So if you're interested in helping build a secure brick and work together to get the bricks so you can build the defenses you need, we're willing in the Norwegian cyber range to cooperate and start with one secure brick at a time. Right, Greta? Sorry for it taking so long. I'm a professor. I mean, asking me to talk for 20 minutes is not easy, you know that.
Yeah, I know it. You did well, so no worries. So, I think we don't have time for a question. Stuart is not going anywhere, so he will be here. We will have a short break now. After the break, we will start another interesting discussion in more interactive format in that sense that we will organize it as a panel discussion. It won't be any more keynotes, but we will have a chance to, and you also have a chance to ask questions. So let's take a break now and see you soon. Not in Zoom, but soon. Hopefully not.
See, he's trying to make security funny again.
Okay. So hello, welcome back. We will continue our Cybercation. And the next plan is to have a panel discussion. And may I kindly ask to join here on stage with me, Grete, Juha, and Hans. Please find a place here. Basically, we had only one question for them. And the question is, what and how is done on current landscape? And these are representatives from secondary education, basically know about their country's secondary education. And may I start with Hans? What's how it's done in Iceland, if we're talking about cybersecurity education?
I think it really depends on the teacher who is teaching kids ICT. The curriculum is the national curriculum is very open, so you almost can skip this part. But at least for me, I think we should strengthen it more and have more structure in ICT security, cybersecurity. But many teachers are doing good, and the capital area has a lot of teachers and ICT coordinators to create subject for security and that part. But I think in smaller municipalities in Iceland it can be a bit hard and probably not really good in teaching security in schools.
I will ask one more question, extra question, because I know that you are IT teacher. Mm-hmm. What kind of problems students meet if you talk about cybersecurity? I mean, what kind of cybersecurity problems they meet, and what this is maybe a topic that the teacher should deliver them in their classes. What are these main threats in Iceland?
Yeah, for example, in my classes, I really try to use news when something happens in cybersecurity, some hacking, or someone lost his password or he clicked the wrong link. I try to use it in my lessons and try to implement how they should not do, or but we. At least I think we should have more lesson plans made for us and more structure in teaching this. But we try to teach in basic, for example, with passwords, which is really hard for, when you're talking about 5th graders, teaching them how to do really good password, because, other teachers will not like you when you teach that, because next week or the day after, they have, of course, forgotten. It's a process. It takes a long time to remember good passwords, and but it's a part of learning. And yeah,
it's part of learning, and I understand that you mentioned important thing that this how question is something that needs to be solved, that how it should deliver, and your example using real examples from real life news and everything, this might help.
Yeah.
So okay, let's move to Norway now. Grete, what are your thoughts about this?
I have 3 things that I would like to mention, and there's these initiatives in elementary schools, and then we have some initiatives in the secondary high schools, and then we also now have something at the universities. And these are requirements from the government, but still we are working on it. And about children's schools, it's not really about cybersecurity, but this interesting thing that I've seen that my son now, when they were learning about the Peace Prize, they learned that through Minecraft, which is of course a gaming platform that everybody is using. So what I'm thinking is that why don't we use Minecraft also to learn them cybersecurity? The second initiative is an initiative for secondary high schools where is called CyberSmart. And if you look into CyberSmart online, you can find more information about it. It's an initiative where you have both teachers and students working together to figure out how can we learn this in the best way. And this has been done in secondary high schools now. I think it's around 5 or 6 of them, but there's a lot of these schools, so we need to form it to actually provide it to everybody and make it mandatory. So that's the next step, but the initiative is there. The third initiative, which I was a part of in the beginning of the project, was for health workers, those who are educated healthcare workers at a bachelor level. And this can be a nurse, it could be somebody working on radiology or different types of things. And in the beginning, we framed the project by the NIST framework to build up cases that could be should be examples on how we learn about detection, how we learn about all the things in the NIST framework. And we built up this, and they have made a lot of films, and they have made a lot of different steps and discussions for healthcare students, where they learn about it from their perspective. So they have created the scenarios themselves based on the framework. And I think that if we should continue these things, we should make sure that all types of education, this was a healthcare example, but it could be in agriculture, it could be in any type of education, that we do this kind of steps. We use cybersecurity frameworks, but we make them do the work based on what could happen in their area of expertise.
Okay. Let's go to Finland now. Juha, please.
Yes, I mean in Finland it's a little strange because we don't have such a subject as an ICT or computer science, for example, in upper secondary schools at all. And so in that sense we don't have a curricula, of course, and then we don't have such a thing in that curricula. And in lower secondary, yes, there is such a subject, but probably it's not that many hours anymore given after the new curricula given in 2016. And therefore, I feel that then when we talk about the how to raise the public awareness of the cybersecurity issues in all the people, youngsters, it is not done that much by the school anymore. Maybe we use tools that are given by some other, and we have, for example, the biggest issue that happened in the upper secondary school that I am mostly in is our matriculation exam digitalized 5 to 10 years ago. And at that time, all the final exams went to digital, which meant that all the students had to learn how to use computers for the first time, because otherwise they won't be passing the exams. And there came certain issues that we need to teach them. On the other hand, at the moment, there's happening a lot in the IT departments. They are strengthening the passwords, and they are shutting down the systems without the VPN systems, and so on and so on and so on. So in everyday life, we see our students see that we really need to make a change, and mostly it is why again they are making our lives harder, and that's the reality. On the other hand, during the past 5 years, there has been a good things happening outside the school, or people have. There was said earlier on that the cybersecurity should be fun, or that was said here, and so what does mean fun? I mean, for digital very small children, for example, our digital youth work has published visual stories for them, how the hacking should be, or what when you are in your phone and in certain systems, what does that mean? Or our national broadcasting company Yle made a lot of 5 to 10 minute shots about how actual hackers went among the normal people and what did they do there, and why did those people, normal people, act so stupidly. And that is the way how I feel that it should be pressed on instead of these rules and regulations. And that's one part. And of course there is I think unfortunately in the field of ICT the girls are, or the women are still a very big issue, at least in Finland. And we can target things for certain people. And for example, we organized the cybersecurity learnathon by Cisco Systems within our schools. And it was very interesting. In that field, there were like 10 boys that attended, but 21 girls. And it was the first time in my 25-year career as an ICT people that I was able to get more girls than boys. And I was very excited. The other thing is that this is good. We need to have this basis build up better, but then we need to have certain things for the people that are studying ICT as a whole, and then we really need to have, when we are talking about the cybersecurity experts, what can be done, and that can be already done in upper secondary schools, because the skills. It's not something that you're born with, it's something that you can adapt quite easily, but you really need some way to do it. And that's what our school has been doing, because we are the only ICT specialized upper secondary school in Finland, given by the Ministry of Education the role. And we have had systems, and I feel that there are so many good things there. There are cooperation between companies, cooperation between universities, as a new thing, cooperation with the Finnish military, for example, and so on and so on.
Interesting. You mentioned that it sounds quite similar to Estonian situation. We also don't have this ICT special subject in our school program. It's basically up to the school to decide. But how it's solved is that in 2014 they decided that digital competence will be embedded as one of the key competences. And key competencies means that basically all the teachers, or a language teacher, or physical education teacher, or math teacher, you have to also support this digital competence. But this digital competence includes cybersecurity also. So. But the problem is that teachers are not ready to design the lessons so that they're actually teaching so that it helps somehow, it helps students digital competence, including cybersecurity. So basically, my question to our keynote, one of the keynote was earlier was about digital literacy, because we know that all our countries' digital rate is almost 100. We have only country in the world who has 100 is North Korea, obviously, but there are countries statistics digital and there are countries statistics about internet use, and so basically countries who doesn't have that kind of high level literacy rate, let's say 20% of society who can read and write basic concepts, but internet use is almost 60% of society. Basically, they are using technology without understanding what we're doing. So, and I don't know, this is a world problem, but we have to solve this Nordic-Baltic region here. How to help our teachers to become better teachers, to make lessons so that actually it supports their cybersecurity knowledge. So, how Finland has solved this similar way, like Estonia, like I told you, embedded to curriculum, like a general competence. You decide how and what.
Yes, I mean, in we have now a new curricula that started 2020, I guess, and in the past 2016 it was the same way embedded everywhere. And then they had in the end of the national curricula, it was said that after this everybody knows these and these things. And when it was published in 2016, I was in the building that they were saying. I was saying that's not going to happen, and it didn't happen. And then now it's getting rid of there. In the new ones, there are certain parts still left, but still we feel that, at least I feel it, so that especially we have had in our school also a good question, because we started back 10 years. We built up 2 schools together in a new renovated building, and we were talking about this, that how can we teach our students when they come into our school the ICT factor. And there were these possibilities, so that every teacher in their own subject teaches that part that bestly suits for them. And then there is this other thing that, okay, because in our school, because we are a specialized school, 1/3 of our students are special ICT students. We have the teacher volume enough so that we could give the lessons first in the ICT, and then at how do you want to do it? And it was like 50-50, but basically what we did is that we are now giving them just in the beginning of their studies by the ICT teachers the basic knowledges, and then they in all the subject like physics or chemistry or biology or so, they just concentrate using and deepening on those softwares. And I believe that because we cannot, even when we go to a smaller schools, there is not that many people or teachers there, and their knowledge of the field might be, well, not so bright maybe. And then if we count to that someone will do it, then probably there will be so that maybe someone will get the chance and some of won't, and that's very horrifying if we after that we believe that everybody knows. Our school is in that sense very special that I just last week looked at from how many lower secondary schools they are coming to our school, and the number was 88 different schools for the students that we have, like 700 at the moment. So that means that we see what happens in 88 different schools, and the variety of their knowledge or how to use the computers or whatever, it varies so much. And in that sense, even though that our curricula says that this is the limit, this is the way how it should be done, we know that it's not done. And therefore, we should, for everybody, at least make the basic level so that they have to do it. And maybe someone will get bored, but then of course on the other hand we have to find interesting things. Again, even though it's upper secondary students, we must find what they are interested of.
Exactly. So just let you know, but if you have questions or you want to say something about these questions, raise your hand, and Robin will give you a microphone. So, and those who are online, you can also use the QR code and send a question, and I will. Stuart, please.
In terms of privacy and ethics, is that written somewhere in the curriculum that they should learn something about ethics first? I mean, is that part of a curriculum, or would that be taught in? And then with privacy, what are they in the curriculum tells them to talk about the law, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, do we have that in the curriculum anywhere, that they're supposed to learn that they have? I mean, we keep talking about cybersecurity, but of course privacy is another huge issue that we have to bring in, and that might be even more relevant to a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Does anybody have privacy on the agenda?
In Finnish way, ethics is there more, I would say, but privacy in real life, yes, but I mean, there is a curricula, and then there is a local curricula, and then there is a school, and then there is a teacher. And in Finland, the teacher in the classroom is a god, and it varies so much who is in the charge. But I see it happen, so that there is a talk about privacy, there is talk about ethics.
So why? I mean, it would seem to me that the channel doesn't have to be technical, etc. It can be cyber ethics as a way of coming in, because everybody realizes that this technological gap is creating ethical problems.
I think part of this cyber ethic you're talking about is when you are digital literate, digital literacy, it's probably part of cyber ethic and ethics in general. And for example, if I talk about Iceland, I don't remember having seen in curriculum something about privacy in terms of computers or cyber. So it's but of course it's taught, which is part of it's part of teaching in computers in general, and how to use it. But in the curriculum, I don't remember to have seen that.
Well, the only thing I'm saying that in terms of getting across the curriculum, I'm thinking that ethics might be a channel to get the awareness up, etc. I mean, is it ethical to drive 100 kilometers an hour? Is it ethical not to update your computer? I mean, that's ethics touches everybody, so it's a good channel.
Just one thing. For example, in our philosophy and psychology classes, we talked about, we had a good conversation with the teachers that we were talking about if we have a self-autonomous car with AI, and we have to in a cross section we have to drive over a kid or an older person. Which one should we choose? Because we had to make the decision by programming, and there are good questions, because the kid will have a longer life, and many chose to kill the older one. And then on the other hand, the older one might have so much knowledge about the society, and he might bring new things to and that is something. And then many kids said, well, we don't kill anybody. We said, well, you have to. There is a reason. You are driving so fast that the car makes a decision, and you cannot say that halt and we made, and we get a good conversation with for example, philosophy and psychology teachers. Why did they choose the young kid or the old one?
Great, I want to add. Okay.
Yeah, but if it's not cybersecurity. Is it cybersecurity or is it not cybersecurity? That's a question. But what they in Norway, they for sure learn about privacy due to taking pictures, for instance, sharing pictures, and that's a good start. That is a part of the curriculum. Yeah.
Okay, we have more questions.
Yeah, I want to step again a bit back to what Juho said before, and also Stuart kind of with the brick analogy that we should build bricks first. And I'm taking now a little bit bricks in education, that how we kind of should form a good individual. So if you have to rate cybersecurity education versus building an individual that can do critical thinking, what is more important? Or do you actually get automatically skills in cybersecurity if you have an individual that can do critical thinking? And I think that binds a lot back to, do you need to teach how to think first, or do we need to teach skills?
Yeah, I would say that at least in order to use the deep cybersecurity skills, you really need to have the background at least, or otherwise you have just learned how to use a burp suite or something else. And that doesn't, I mean, in a longer run, it doesn't bring good ideas in front. On the other hand, we need them both. So it's very hard. But I would, because I'm talking about the public secondary schools, so I would put my money on the first level, and then maybe see if there are coming some IAPs.
I think critical thinking is part of cybersecurity. Or cybersecurity is part of critical thinking. You really have to be critical, and you have to think. At least I think it's combined, and it's a part of critical thinking to be secure in somehow.
Yeah, I want to add, and Robin Mer's question, the critical thinking actually is, as I'm actually working as a teacher and also part of academia, my academia position is that I followed is digital literacy, and digital literacy has this critical thinking area that basically if you use, there are good questions, but Stuart mentioned also why, how, what. So basically this, you have to first think when you use, is it safe and everything, because this digital world is all about being critical. And Hans mentioned reading newspaper articles in lesson. This is one example how this critical level thinking is activated. Basically, we all know so good old this fake news type of stuff. So
No,
this
what,
is yeah.
sorry. What I mean is, you know, about critical thinking and cybersecurity is, you know, we teach programming, and programming is part of critical thinking. You have to make complex lines to do something. It's at least I think of critical thinking like that. That you can, you know, if it's complicated, you have to really think hard to make progress. And I think, for example, a fifth grader trying to create a really hard password for himself is part of, you know, work and working on complex solutions. Maybe the terminology I am using is not the same you are thinking about, but at least I will answer it like that.
Yes, and as an addition for that also, I mean, when we talk about just the cybersecurity, are we talking about the basics or are we talking about deep things? But then there are these, let's talk about coding theory, communication technologies, programming, cryptography, and so on, things that are in our curricula, at least in some ways. And they really, after that, you have a so much better skill set to go further on there, and then it is something that we do, and it is in our curriculum in that sense.
Greta, you want to add something?
No, I'm just thinking about my son again. Sometimes I make short sentences. I just give him some orders, for instance. And then he says to me, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And then I was just thinking, okay, now I have to go back and think about what type of language did I just use. And it comes to cybersecurity language, it could be. It could be my oral language, my written language, my way of talking. I'm talking as an angry mother, or I'm using my values, or is it yeah? What type of language is it? Yeah, the ethos and the etc. All this type. We think about critical thinking, but of course we shouldn't have all those critical thinking thoughts in our heads. But in cybersecurity, when you do programming, it's for sure important. But it's also important when we teach how we use our language, how we build up scenarios for exercises, how we are we able to use pathos in cybersecurity, etc. Yeah, it's a difficult question, but I think my son still will continue to say to me, "This doesn't make sense." So then I'll have to rethink again.
There is a mic. Yeah, and where's a question, please, audience?
I have a question. So we are in Aalto University in Finland. We are designing a platform that includes information about cybersecurity, and we are going to design a cyber game for the cyber education. So would this be one way to bring a kind of equality to cybersecurity education? Because I have discussed here with many people, it seems that there is a kind of problem that teachers doesn't have a kind of they don't know how to teach the cyber things, and it seems that cyber is missing from the curricula. And then I was thinking that in what way do you think that this kind of a material, the platform and cyber games, so how could it be integrated in the lessons in the schools? And then last question, your opinions. How do you think, what kind of this kind of cyber game, what would be a good kind of cyber game?
And the answer is funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of research on this for whatever, so I can give you, and yeah, we could talk research if you wanted. There's a lot of different things about gamification and its effect, and if we get pedagogically, we get into this problem of learning styles. And I don't know how many people know about learning styles, but it's a huge controversial area in this. But it appears that games work for about 2/3 of the population. You're going to have a third of the population that it's not going to make a difference. So they have to be targeted. So you have to have a diversity of this. And games don't work for everybody. So that's the first thing to say this with. And a lot of people think they're going to solve everything, but some people don't learn by games. You operationalize the learning, so they learn it and then they forget it because all they want to do is win, not learn. So you really have to be, it's a tricky one, but you ain't going to solve everything with games.
Okay, Hans.
Yeah, but part of learning, part of learning cybersecurity could be with games. It could be one brick.
Well, well, going back, can I just comment?
No, just so I can finish that, if we, as a teacher, if I'm going to teach programming, of course, in third to fifth grade or sixth grade, we use games usually.
Yes.
And we have endless varieties of games. We can go to code.org, or we can get Scratch and Khan Academy, and everything is free, and really, really good lesson plans and really good lessons in those games. Why not cybersecurity games?
But
so we can play with it in younger classes. I really think it could be nice to have, at least in some aspect. Of course, we have to teach also ethics and give an examples. But I think, and also the guys who are competing outside, outside this room, I really like this concept. And so cybersecurity, simple games for young kids, definitely I would like to see that.
Can I comment on some? Okay, so yeah, we've done research on this, whatever going on, and we have statistics and all this. And I taught 2 years mathematics at a high school level, in an agricultural college. I can get into that. Now, in mathematics, we always had this thing: should we teach set theory first, or we should teach arithmetic first? So teach them how to count. So we had this thing, and what was found pedagogically after 20 years is that if you start off people by using set theory, they become good mathematicians, but they can't multiply 9 times 5 in their head. So we have to distinguish in the pedagogical models how different types of pedagogical frameworks. So it happened in Canada. I can give you statistics in Canada. If we measure this, that 20% of the population still can't write a check anymore because they can't multiply in their head, etc. But you might get good mathematicians. So you have to decide that so again, it's a problem of having a smorgasbord, Swedish anyways, of different things that you could use, because not all curriculum matches the learning styles of the individuals.
Okay, Greta.
No, the question that was asked, I found it interesting because we see that there's a difference between girls and boys. Boys are gaming more, they are doing war games and are very into war games. And in cybersecurity, we have built up a lot of games that are based on war games. So if we, but what we then saw, what they saw then when they introduced this way of learning about the peace prize through games, then it became interesting for the girls as well. So girls can be interested in games if there are things in the games that are of interest to them. And gaming can be interesting for everybody, but maybe it's the learning goals which we talked about earlier, the learning artifacts and how we build up that for the right persons, the right individuals, or the right institutions. I talked about, for instance, healthcare or agriculture, or then for the girls for this example that it is the Peace Prize. So when we should try not only to use board games as an example for gaming.
I agree.
Forward. We should build up the type of games or type of learning objectives, types of learning artifacts that are interesting for a broader audience.
Just one thing. Okay, there is going on a hacker event there, and I'm seeing quite an old guys and girls or women having a bug bounties or hack days or so on. So there is a gamification even in us older, but and also for the younger. But one thing that when you think about building a game and cybersecurity, and one thing that I'm very been happy with is it's the social aspect. I mean, there are teams there are teams in electronic games, there are teams in real life, in companies. There is no one doing it alone, and this is something that you quite nicely get people to build up together in a certain goal with the different qualifications, and even with the younger and older and more knowledge or less startup, and that is something that should be cherished.
Yeah. Okay, we have questions.
Just
A comment.
So when I was teaching at the agricultural college, I had classes of boys and I had classes of girls. They weren't really classes that way, but all the girls wanted to learn how to ride, and all the boys were driving tractors. So what I did is I had a competition to figure out whether a horse was more efficient in terms of cutting wood and moving the thing out in terms of energy. And you can saw how the females and the males competed, because the girls wanted to prove that a horse is better than a tractor. So the competition aspects of games are interesting, but it's more contextualizing the problem. And that way they learned arithmetic, because the girls didn't know arithmetic well enough to actually decide how you're going to mix feed for the horse, etc., etc., and the boys couldn't calculate this. So the games have to be put in a context that is important. So it's contextualization. Always be contextualizing in order for them to get engaged and or learn. But just because they're engaged doesn't mean they learn. But again, it's going back to the games. We have to make sure it's contextualized in a way that they can, for the student. Otherwise, it just turns into another thing I have to do for the teacher and go out and run to recess later on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There is also the question about the games, that is it played by themselves? Is it played by the teams? Is it played by under some guidance? Is it played so that now you start, now you end, and it gives a totally different aspect of that, and I feel that in the cybersecurity games, if it's not just a short something, please show that you know how to do this, we should have so that there is someone guiding, someone targeting, someone pointing, someone holding, now look at this, and so on, we would get better results.
Yep.
In terms of that, in terms of the game itself, in Ericsson, we did this with games. So we had employees learning about this, and also we used artificial intelligence in the game. So we had chatbots in the game. And then what was interesting is that what we'd like to see is the students would be programming the chatbots. So they would be, you have the avatar type of notion. So you're using the avatar type of notion, and then having them being, because you learn by teaching, so the students would have to train the chatbot to be secure in terms of that notion. So that's what we found, and that aspect seems to get them engaged, and we have a lot of research on chatbots on how they can use to do this. And so we don't have the teachers doing it, it's the students and some artificial intelligent thing going on, and they like programming computers too.
Okay, thank you for your questions. We have almost 4 minutes. I want to tailor it up something because we had this really cool panel discussion that we had. We know because you can help me because you have to agree with me. Otherwise, I will not. Yeah. Okay. I was just boosting last question. This is like kind of yes or no answer. We all know, but for me, my takeaways here from this, we need to help teachers. Is it be like a game-based solution or whatever way we need to find a way how to help our teachers because I'm not sure because that the myth that is running around among teachers that the young generation knows everything is not true, and basically what they use this as an excuse because I know that the young generation knows everything. Sure we do, but and that's why I'm not teaching them. Tell me one teacher who hasn't been taught, hasn't educated, become a master degree teacher at school, who hasn't trained to support critical thinking or ethics. Actually, this is not a straightforward connection to digital world, but it's part of the digital world. So what is your impression? Is this a takeaway that we need to make a way how our best how to help our teachers, provide them solutions and say them that actually young generation needs teaching because they don't have any extras. I have seen new babies. They don't have any USB stick or Wi-Fi antennas or anything. And they don't know, but the teacher believe that they know. So Hans, starting with you.
Yeah, in the beginning we need the government to say that we have to teach it. So it has to be in the curriculum.
But we are 4 of us. We can't teach. It's not possible that you teach the whole Iceland, or Juha will take over Finland, and Greta will, together with Stuart, will have part-time job in.
Yeah, exactly, of course. So
it's not possible. So
but yeah, if we are talking general and we don't have anything, in the curriculum, we have to teach, of course. And part of the gamification, of course, it's just a fraction of what we are going to teach. It's just a tool in some aspect of cybersecurity in general, but we have to be we have to strengthen it and start teaching it, and we need lesson plans for that.
Greta?
I think collaboration is very important. It's collaboration across different types of sectors. And I think we who sit here have a special responsibility to make sure that our type of knowledge comes across different types of sectors. That we are able to teach people in the oil industry about this. That we are able to teach people in the any type teachers. Normal teachers about this. So it's about responsibility, but it's also to be open to collaborate with other peoples. And when initiatives like those I talked about in the beginning of the session, when those come across, we should at least take a little bit part of it, and we should give some guidance along the way so they are able to get started.
Okay, thank you. Juha?
Well, of course, I mean, outside the world, so companies and universities and military aspects and so on. So we ask them to come to the school. I mean, they are very willing at the moment. And we should use that more. The other one is that in the schools, the teachers who are already in there just go together with the students and start finding things. I mean, it's not something that they are taught already to do, but in this field, everybody is as a new person as anyone. So go and see and read the news, find out what's behind, ask someone else. I believe that would be, because we cannot wait 20 or 30 years under when we have the new kind of teachers who are born with this.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, 3 yeses from this panel.
Yeah,
So,
you wanted 3 yeses,
yeah,
so you
I
got
wanted
it.
3 yeses. That's how it should work. So basically, yeah, learn from me how to organize this panel discussion. I will get these 3 yeses. Yeah. The point is, what I'm saying, that teachers needs to be supported so that to show that actually it's not you don't have to have like high-level hacking skills or programming skills in order to teach something that can be labeled. And maybe we'll discuss it soon with the university higher education panel. But this cyber hygiene. This is something normal. We don't put a seatbelt. We lock the door if we leave a building, a house, and clean the teeth and whatever. This is teacher can do. Although they are actually not dentists. I don't know any teacher who is a dentist. I can say it. I'm not a dentist, so basically I don't know how to teach a kid. I'm scared of teaching how to brush the teeth, so it can be a difficult. So thank you very much, Hans, Greta, Juho. So please take your seats, and I will open up a new panel discussion now. Yeah, and I will ask here to join the floor here, Vitautas, Stuart, Alo, and Elda. And we are continuing higher education. If secondary education does its job well, higher education basically joins. I will sit here, so you can sit here. So higher education just relaxes and plays funny games. Okay, is it true? Yeah, that's why we need Hans and Greta and Juho and our teachers to help become a better higher security. So we are ready to continue, and basically the question is same. And we start with Vitautas. Please tell shortly, we have 45 minutes, about Lithuanian situation, but this perspective is this time higher education.
Of course, there are some good things and some bad things when we're talking about cybersecurity education in my country, for example. Surprisingly, for example, 2 years ago, we performed analysis of almost all study programs that are dealing in one or another way with information technologies, and we found that almost each more than 90% of those programs related with ICT technologies has the course called or information technology security or cyber security. That's both in universities and both in colleges and all levels. So at least absolute majority of IT specialists, computer scientists, has some knowledge about cybersecurity. For me, it is difficult to say how each college, for example, teaches this course. But anyway, we are expecting that those graduates have something knowing about this. And we have also 3 master student programs that are directly in one or another way involved in cybersecurity training. And for example, our program, which is called Information Technologies and Cybersecurity, the single program which pays main emphasis, main focus on the cybersecurity issues and start this training from the bachelor level. But obvious problem is another, because just what I said is true for IT students. But because information technologies are so pervasive in all aspects of our lives, to deal with them has almost all graduates. And graduates, students in other areas of studies almost has any special training in this area, except maybe that case if they're willing to study something like that or something like this. So as in my opinion, for example, my experience tells that when you're teaching cybersecurity, you need to teach 2 things. One thing is to try to transfer knowledge, but you also need to build and to train, to develop some habits of behavior. And it is much more complicated to educate to develop those habits than to transfer the knowledge. That's likely main point that I want to say for a moment.
Thank you, Tautas. Just before we continue, the same goes. If you have questions, raise your hands. If you are listening us through YouTube, for example, please send a question and I will receive it on my fancy tablet. I will change the order and I will now turn to Elda.
Okay.
And we're going to 10 marks, please.
Okay. So I'm primarily teaching at the master level, but what is interesting and one of the specializations and masters that we're teaching, we have this new masters in which we call software design. And the main requirement to get into this master program is that you shouldn't have learned any IT beforehand. So the students come from all sorts of bachelors that are not computer science. And the interesting thing with this batch of students is that we have to really recreate all of the methods we teach computer scientists to deal with security, cybersecurity. So we teach them what we call applied information security, and we try to have them in teams where they could really learn through knowledge sharing while they're embarking in this new journey and learning new skills, so to say, but they're using a lot of their previous backgrounds as well. Because I think Stuart mentioned this, but also as part of my research, I do a lot of research in socio-technical security, where we try to advocate the importance of dealing with security early, even though lots of reports from this big force, Deloitte, PwC, keep on constantly saying how much companies lose as a result of attacks. There is some movement with more companies starting a bit earlier, but still there's a lot of work to be done. So you want to start already in the classroom with raising this awareness of the importance of dealing with security early, as opposed to having it as an afterthought. And taking advantage of these different backgrounds, we really want to emphasize the need of dealing with the security not just as a technical thing, which is not to say it's not important, it's pretty important, but we feel there's a lot that has been done with technical security, but now security is not a technical endeavor alone anymore. As we move into systems where we don't think about the software system only, but we look at the people that use the system, the organizations that deploy such systems, the organizational processes that the systems support, then we're having this complex socio-technical system, and we need an adequate understanding of where security vulnerabilities could be emerging and how you need to tackle security problems. So in this sense, I think it's relevant to prepare students, but also provide them with insights of what potential career paths they could be having, even though they didn't study computer science or they're not all very good in math when they join this school. So this is, tell me how long an answer at this point, or a short answer I should give
okay.
it. So this is the reality at ITU, which is the university where I teach. At a national level, take this with a grain of salt, because it's mostly the experiences I hear and the collaboration with colleagues of mine who are involved in this big project that is called Cyber Skills. And this is basically trying to target also high school kids as a way to train them to get the necessary cyber skills and cybersecurity skills. And we do lots of things like the battle today. They've been participating in a similar one in the Czech Republic some time ago, and they just won the European Championships last month, if I'm not mistaken. So it is used as a way to raise awareness, and as a way also to keep them engaged. And we also have these new ethical hacking courses as a way to intrigue them that it's not just about the bad guys hacking into these systems, but how could you really help your country get better. So we had some students hack into the water supply system. They were just reading the data on the meters, and you wouldn't think that just from the data on the meters that are some numbers they could really go back and get personal information about. people registered. So they sent this report back to the water supply company so that they could do the necessary patches. And so you can see also some impact starting from the university project in a course to an actual company having to make some changes in their systems. So I think for now,
Okay,
should be
thank
good.
you for that.
Thank you.
Let's hear now Alo.
Thank you. So I'm from Estonia. So as you all know, we have this wonderful event going on, and Estonia was probably one of the first countries to be attacked by somebody digitally. So I believe we are a few years ahead of people. So probably a little bit better than others, but still, I believe that in the higher education, our security teaching or the cybersecurity curriculums are quite good. We teach in bachelor's, master levels different programs, and students have access to all what they need. But as you said before, the cross-border or other curriculums not IT related are more tricky to get to. I'll also say a few words about the lower educations. Unfortunately, there we get a lot more messy because I believe that the security should start before, and there's way more schools than there is universities. So probably it's easier to get the new things into the universities compared to schools. And this is where it gets more tricky to actually get those programs to the high schools and lower levels. But yeah, I think in general Estonia is really good, and we have a cool events. I personally teach a lot of people, and hopefully we get more and more people educated in the security in the longer years. Anything you want to add yourself, Firos Estonian?
I was thinking because I was listening to Elda. Elda mentioned cyber security skills. You mentioned that this is a good connection. Thanks for this connection. But it should start earlier than higher education. So this is why I stuck now. But I will first give a word again to Stuart. So.
Can I just get something? 2 seconds?
Yeah, please.
Sorry about
time.
this.
Okay. Because I understand that actually this is important. Now I got confirmation that it's important, but the cybersecurity shouldn't start at university. It should start before. So I don't know how much you know about this EU KIIT's online statistics, but UK statistics show that the use of daily use of smartphones starts already if KIIT is 3 or 4 already. So basically, they are using daily basis kind of stuff. So basically, I have a PhD student who is doing a master, PhD student, doing a PhD, trying to pose a plan for kindergarten. They have this school readiness cards, but schools, kindergarten, if a kid finishes kindergarten, will receive a school readiness card, and we try to embed it into a school readiness card so that school teacher already knows what kind of digital skills the kid already knows, the child already knows, and this today's event also already made me think that maybe somehow, at some level, the question is, I want another question about what level, what skills from the talk, what is expected actually, should be already taught in early childhood education. Or not taught, but at least mentioned through their parents. So Stuart, now we're back, please.
Thank you. In terms of the Swedish situation, as I said, I know at Stockholm University, EDP cybersecurity programs were developed in 1985 because I was teaching there. So this has been going on since 1985. In 1999, we held the first in the International Federation of Information Processors. There's a working group called Security Education, and we have subcommittees in 1119. I actually held the conference in Copenhagen in August last year. So this is a huge area that's been going on in different communities around. In Sweden right now, I have this brochure. Anybody wants it, I can send it to you. There's a huge initiative called the Cyber Campus Sweden. The Swedish government's going to be investing around, we don't know because we just changed governments, but we have an inside source saying they're going to spend about 8 million euro on setting up this cyber campus. We got it from the new minister that's coming in. We sort of have information ahead of time, so there's things going on. And this is a study. They did a study of all Europe, and they're trying to steal with pride from different organizations, so there's a huge things going on. I've developed 2 master's programs and implemented them in Sweden, one at the University of Skövde and one at Stockholm University, and of course the one in Jurvik. And I would say there's about 5 different master's programs right now in Sweden that offer masters in information security or cyber security. So it's a long, ongoing effort. This is being driven to a large extent by KTH. They have an online program. KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology, I did my doctorate at, they have been given a contract by the Swedish military to do the education for the cyber soldiers. They have that program in it now. There are 2 cyber ranges in Sweden. One that I work at is called RISE, which is open, done by the research community there, and we're training both at the corporate level, and we're also using these cyber ranges to test equipment. So that's the other thing you want to do. You want to use, there are international standards. We're getting in Europe to this self-certification. So the idea is that you would certify an organization because once a year they have run an exercise in a cyber range where we go in and we do that. We have ways. So in terms of the educational platform, there's many different things we can talk about the situation in Sweden. It's been going on for a long time. Stockholm University, at their master's program, you do not have to have a degree in computer science to get into the master's program, but then you have to take a 1.5 ECT. I don't know, here we're talking universities, a 7.5 or 5 ECT program in computers before you can in the course. So we have a long tradition as to whether Estonia is the best. Okay, whether you were the first or whatever in terms of cyber attack, we can get into Georgia and what happened there, but it's always debatable in this thing, whatever. So the educational platform, there's quite a few. I think what I want to see, though, and I've been pushing for it at the Stockholm School of Economics, I want to see an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration in cybersecurity, because it's all about the money. You can have good technicians, you can have good whatever, until we convince the businessman that this is an issue. So we have this in different programs. We're trying to have an MBA program, if anybody knows what MBAs are, in this area. And I think that's important to put it because that's where the money is. As soon as we get the MBA program to understand it, it'd be easier for everybody. So I would suggest getting an executive MBA that focuses on cybersecurity. And there's a market for it. I've seen it. We've done some statistics on it. There's a market for that. If anybody knows executive MBAs, people are working and they come, they go for a week and they train something. I set up something like this in 2010 at the Stockholm School of Economics. I don't know what happened to the program. As I said, I moved on. So I think what we have to do is get away. Don't let the techies do it, as you said before. And I think what we have to do is start getting the business people involved in cybersecurity, because it is money that makes the world go round.
Okay,
Yeah, may I add to you? You said we need to get business people into the thing that confirms my idea that I have recently built up, is that the digital world is actually a second world. So we basically really have all the problems we had before computers. We are starting to reinvent them or relive them in the digital world. All the most security issues we have are same. Do you teach kids to lock the door when they leave the house? But why don't we teach them to lock the computers? It's similar things. So a lot of things that pop up in the security, we can actually relearn them basically from the past. And this is, I think, that if you have this mindset, it could help a little bit to ease up the afraidness or the scariness of the big IT world, to like look at the past, what have been done in the physical world before the computers, and then we can get to the digital solutions to fix the similar problems.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But this comes going back to Stuart's keynote speech when he mentioned hype. And this kind of hype has somehow made teachers a little bit, they don't feel so good. And that's why the reason they say no, because we are not ready to use this fancy technology. And my question, one of the questions, if I will have a chance, will be, do you agree with me that cybersecurity is not actually that tricky in a normal situation? I'm not talking about protecting bank systems or something, but normal people, let's say phone, something like this. It's what I've learned during my academia years, that actually things are actually easier when we think we somehow create them bigger. And this is basically we're creating a new problems ourselves, and this is all of what you mentioned. Actually, this is exactly what I'm telling to teachers also. You tell them to lock the door. It's normal, but why you? It's just to say, but log out from your account, for example. Don't leave it open. This one word. You don't have to have special skills for this. Just say it. So, is there a question? Yeah, please.
Disagree with you, even if you're from the same country. I think the parallel is really dangerous that you make to the past here, and I think especially in the Nordic countries where trust between society is very, very different than in other countries in this world. From a cultural perspective, I would like to protect something here to say. Why can't we, when we start replicating some from the real world, not make people aware in which environment can you actually trust and can feel safe, and then you can leave your door open because you are in an environment of people you trust, while in some environments, you should not trust anybody and close your door. But I think if we start simplifying that too much and lose critical thinking on this path,
is important.
We just try to put everything in kind of generally true rules, and I think that can become very. I think most of the big tech companies have realized that one of the worst inventions we made in cybersecurity is the password, and especially all the rules around it. Change it every 2 weeks to something new, so you basically enforce people writing it right onto the keyboard to enforce the security. So we need to keep this openness to kind of rethink at this point and integrate cultural behavior into that, else we will run into something that nobody wants to use, and we will just move back significantly.
Yeah, please, Stuart.
Yeah. So Hegelian, I'd like to talk about whether a change in quantity brings about a change in kind. So this is the classic philosophical argument, whether a change in quantity has brought about a change in kind. And I would say the threat picture in cybersecurity has brought about a change in kind. So in terms of using the old thing, but going back to the philosophical notion, has a change in quantity brought about a change in kind? So one of the things I find in terms of that is dealing with concrete and abstract thinking. So not so much critical thinking, but understanding the equivocation between the different types of threats and risk, etc. And that's what's interesting with privacy, whatever. But what I do see, going back to this, is that the same, what we call naive mental model, can be used to deal with these two problems. We don't have to create new models, but we do have to get people to understand that a change in quantity can bring about a change in kind. Now, one of the things you find just a comment, is between safety engineering and security engineering. When I'm teaching people to be safety engineers, you had the concept of if a crack occurs in this part of the plane, there's a chance that it's the real errors around there. When it comes to software engineering, we saw that wasn't the same case. You can have a problem in line 100 that manifests itself in line 2000 in this one. So you can't use proximity as a way of dealing with it. So the difference between safety and security engineering has to be brought up. And this has been a problem in the Scandinavian countries, since the word safety is the same and security are equal. And you can see, well, safety is different than security. And that's one of the threshold concepts that you have to teach, is to understand that safety, putting your seatbelt on is one thing, but having your traffic system hacked by your Bluetooth in your phone, and all of a sudden your car's not driving automatically is another thing. So a change in quantity is a change in kind. So I think there are fundamental things different in that, in the cyber world that we have to deal with. And the only way they can learn it, though, is through experience. So I remember when Super Mario came out. And beforehand, you used to read the manual how to run things, right? But my nieces and nephews, when they were learning Super Mario, they learned that, hey, if you jump on this mushroom, you get 2 points. If you do that, they had to learn by doing. So the notion was learning by doing. So I think we have to create environments where they can learn by doing in cyberspace. And it's easier.
So going back to John Dewey.
What?
Going back to John Dewey, who...
Yeah, Dewey, yes.
Dewey.
Does everybody know John Dewey, American guy, Dewey Decimal?
No, he's
dead now.
Yeah, because this was in the last century, beginning of last century. Yeah, he was. I totally agree with you. But more and more I understand that there is one need that there is also a problem that there are different concepts and they are translated differently.
Yes.
So basically, this is one takeaway from this group, where we should. Basically, what we should propose, that we should use this, like your example was about safety and security. I'm sure most of the people randomly, not here, this building, but take them the same thing. And this is something, and now we're talking about university lectures or not IT lectures. It's in some of our faculty. Yeah.
It was interesting. We had a discussion about learning and doing, etc. We disagree on one thing. We don't know yet. It's the best. He says, first I want to teach them how to break systems, then I teach them how to make systems. That's another one in terms of doing. Well, in terms of learning by doing, do you want to teach everybody how to break a system?
It still can be taken as learning by doing. First you break by doing and creating by doing. So it depends, perspective. So, but going back to the ELDA, and when without us, you have basically the same question from me. What kind of computer security skills are you talking about? Do you have any examples, for example? We are on the same place, so same for without us.
We'll start, okay.
Okay, you will start, okay.
Very, very different skills. For example, the idea came, for example, to us that usually normally people becomes more happy when they're fixing problem than they're making problems. So one of the ways to develop those skills is to give them opportunity to fix already existing problems that really very often makes them joyful. Another thing is sometimes, for example, cybersecurity is, for me, similar to the religious teachings. In that sense that, for example, if you will always follow some requirements, you will not have problems. But the problem is that people not following those requirements, and we have and likely will have the problems in the future. And that's the problem, how, knowing that we as humans are not perfect, to try to minimize our internal human problems, so our internals. And that one of the main issues that I see, for example, is regularly increase people's awareness about the problems. So you need to provide them real example, real problems that they could face if they will not behave in the right way, and the potential consequences of that not correct behavior.
A concrete question to everybody, we should know ahead of time, but one of the things I've been fighting for in information and software engineering is in our field there's something called CVEs. They're called Common Vulnerability Expressions. And I kept saying on the curriculum that you should not be allowed to get out a degree in software engineering if you cannot read a CVE? So these are things that should be baseline requirements. I think we should agree on it, that if a software engineer or one of your students that come out, can your students read a CVE? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Can your students read a CVE?
Yeah.
I'm not sure actually.
I can't say about everyone, but some of them, when we're coming here, we talked about this, and some said that they can. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to do a test. I mean, should we have this as a standard?
Well, let's don't do it.
For me, I was surprised.
What, that they could?
They said, I had not checked, but they
haven't checked.
I actually have a task for them. They have to refer to one particular CVE where they do a referral paper about it, few pages, what's the mistake, how it was fixed, and all of that. So they have to go deep in one of the CVE, in particular in my security course. So actually, yes, I'm confident they have to do it. And they can't pass the course without doing that exercise.
Good, so that's important. I don't know.
But Elda, please.
Yeah, for the CS students, we
cybersecurity.
have the same. For the other masters, that I said, our goals are a bit more modest because we want to get them to a level of raising awareness and understanding the problems before they could go to this other step. So I guess it depends on the target audience that you're having.
And the next one, who should have to write a CV properly? Because I don't know if they could write a CV properly. That's another one. Could your students? I mean, I don't think many of my students could write a good CV.
No, not writing.
Good.
But I think luckily there's not that many of them. Hopefully there will not be that many of them is the correct wording. But I would like to say one more thing about the teaching of security is that the thing that I'm struggling a lot is like where to find the balance between actually making the technical system secure and usability. And this is where a lot of the balance comes in the IT, because I'm a perfectionist because I'm an engineer and I try to make everything perfect. So ideally I would like my students to make everything as secure as possible. And then basically they are telling me that I'm teaching them how to make systems unusable.
Exactly.
And
I mean,
this is
what is perfect?
This is where the biggest struggle of an computer security actually comes from. How do we balance those two things? And in the commercial world, we put the money as a third triangle, and then we try to find the balance everywhere there. And this is, in my mind, why the security, or the perfect security, is actually impossible to reach, because we can't achieve all those three things at the same time.
Security is a trade-off.
Yeah, I have a common question I've been answering on exams every year. I started off at KTH. And the question is it worth it to put €100 lock on a €50 bicycle? And the students know about this question ahead of time. There's no right answer, of course. But they're supposed to be able to argue for or against that question. So I'd like to see maybe we could have a common exam. We can give them a common CV once a year and answer this question. Is it worth it to put a €100 lock on a €50 bicycle? I don't know the answer. I've seen many different answers.
Unfortunately, I also need to acknowledge that in my classes, I often repeating one statement for students. If you need to select or the security or the usability, you need to select usability. Unfortunately. Because if you will make something that will be very secure but not usable, this will bigger problem that if you're making not so secure but usable thing.
Yeah, if I may add to this, this has not been so much part of the teaching curricula rather than collaboration with his colleague who's an expert in human factors and security. So we've been together doing lots of projects and supervising students in assessing the current landscape in Denmark when it comes to cybersecurity challenges, the culture, as you mentioned, which is a very, very important factor because trust in the Nordic countries is such a big thing. And it is interesting to see how in companies, because the landscape there is that we have lots of small and medium enterprises, and as much as they care about security, they are aware about security, their budgets are also limited. So it goes back also to what you raised before, Stuart, having a master's and putting the management people in getting the cybersecurity skills. So the bottom line is when you assess the usability of what they have, we had to kind of redesign the current techniques or methods that they're using, so that you start from the bottom line and try to make sure that security and usability would meet together. And our students ran usability studies on this and went back to, contacting the bakers and hairdressers and all the people that actually, from the point of view of security and digital systems, are completely illiterate. So they just want their business to go on, and they want that no hacker steals their contacts, because their contacts are the most important and valuable information they have, or the information about their employees. So their usability is really, really prevalent, but you could still instill some notion of security that helps them achieve this first basic level of security that we call it. And we were able with some students also, but this is, just scratching the surface, I think. We were able to scratch the surface a bit on proposing some methods that we call like multi-layer security. Then depending on, if it's a hairdresser, a bigger enterprise or so, they could use bits and parts of this while making sure that it's still usable for them and they can understand it. Because there's also a lot of national efforts. Like in the UK, you have this, I think, Cyber Key or something. It's like a badge, cybersecurity badge. And in Denmark, there's an organization, a governmental organization, that is doing the same thing. So in principle, it's trying to target and make a usable path to helping companies be more secure. But we had students check the usability of that system, and it's really, really poor usability there. So we had to intervene with lots of techniques. So finding that trade-off, I think we all agree it's really hard, and it will require a lot of cases and perhaps being more targeted and within even the landscape of organizations, how they work, understanding even, the difference between the baker and hairdresser or the person that has a startup. They are perhaps categorized as the same type of a small business, but they have a completely different background when it comes to security and the digital literacy that they have.
Let's take a question, and when it's, please.
Well, thank you. I think it has been a very interesting discussion, also concerning this these societal effects. I've not been working directly in academia in this field, but I've been dealing with, you could say, threats and accidents for some decades. Working, and I think I got my basic security education being a delivery boy in a bank half a century ago, because it was certain culture one learned there. Then it was dealing with nuclear accidents, with the Chernobyl accident and then later on. And due to lack of nuclear accidents in my field, I started reading as much as I could about other high-tech accidents, because where you have this advanced security culture, mainly aviation accidents and industrial accidents. And I found that there were so many common underlying features, because now for the last decades, I've been in cybersecurity. But what I found, for example, in the 80s was very helpful. That was when we began talking about when we had environmental problems to solve, which we still have. It was let the polluter pay principle. So to blend the, you could say, risk management into production, and like Stuart was mentioning, having an MBA course in cybersecurity, where you would try to combine, if I understand correctly, those that have the money to get them to see the risk management, so that the problem we face often, I feel, in cybersecurity is that some of those that are designing the system, they do not have to bear the burden of the cost if the security goes wrong. So let the polluter pays principle was an attempt to combine these two. So I was just wondering if you could somehow try to get the cost, the penalty to those who design and the system, so that we can have the maybe a better security by design, like you were just talking about right now. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to comment it?
Should I start? Anyone else first? Yeah, so we've designed simulation experiments on this. The concept is called moral hazard, where the decision making is not done by this, and we've designed agent-based simulations that incur this. And yes, having proper feedback loops, as we call this, in terms of the punishment is important. And we have research and publications in this area to show that cybersecurity should be treated as a public good, and it should be managed as such. So what you're talking about formally is externalities in economics and how you manage externalities. I know you're familiar with the term? No. So there is a whole science to using behavioral economics to do these things, and there is a lot of good simulation work done on this and how you distribute the cost, etc. So I mean, we know about this, and we just have to the punishments is. So you know with GDPR how much you can get 2% of your gross revenues, etc., and that seems as effective management. In SOX, you have Sabins-Oxley that has it now, and the way that works and what is the material risk, etc., you have to report it to the stock market. So if 2% of your revenues are affected, you have to report that to the stock markets, or to be punished. So we are slowly implementing punishments into the financial systems, etc. So there is a lot of good research that we can talk about this. As to teaching, though, where we should teach moral hazard, yes, we do that in games. Games are good ways to teach moral hazards. Are you from Iceland? Yeah, I know. Physics and nuclear things, yeah. So we did run a mega game trying to teach that. Last Saturday, we ran a mega game in Iceland to teach that. Whether it worked, I don't know. Some of the students that were here, whatever, that played it, I don't know if they learned it, but they are learning how to hack, how to think about moral hazard. No, they're not. I don't think we're teaching that now in the hackathon. But it's called moral hazard, and there's a lot of research in the area, yes. And regulations have to be done that way.
This may not be direct answer to what you said, but in somehow related. For example, what a problem we see on, for example, or state level or business level, there are people who are responsible for the security. There are someone at least. But what we have a huge network of private users. Absolute majority of them do not have enough knowledge in this area, or some we can say that are even naive in the area of, for example, security, cyber security, in this case, for example. So how can we solve this problem, or at least to ease this problem? So one of our initiatives that we started only very recently, we gave this name to our initiative Cyber Shield Lithuania, is to develop a network of volunteer helpers. We of course very expect that nodes of this network will be our students, but the idea is that in different places we will have a network of volunteers who can come to help for someone in their proximity, to help if someone are facing some problem in this area.
Anyone wants to comment also?
I don't have a direct answer to this, but when you were talking, I was thinking back about this project that you could link to it, of how to raise awareness, of the impacts it has on other, let's say, faces of the same business. So it's not just the people who design it. And it was a way, we had what we call this shared model. So this was completely research and not so much teaching, although I do show part of these tools to some advanced classes students, but it's just one lecture, so I couldn't say this is having a huge impact. But the relevance of that was to really show that whether you're making a change in the design of your security, it's not affecting security alone, but it's having an impact on the business side. And this is not just hearsay or saying it with natural language, but we're showing with what we had this impact propagation analysis, there was a complete reasoning in the background using domain taxonomy, and it was actually used in air traffic management to show how it impacted safety, how it impacted the threats, and how it impacted the budgets, and how they had to allocate the people in the control tower. And surprisingly, when we had this final evaluation with decision makers, they said that for the first time they had this one model to make them aware, so that they didn't have any more to fight that this is more important or that is more important, but they had something concrete to base their decisioning. I don't know if that kind of fits into a bit.
Yeah. For panelists, don't mind this clock at the moment, so we have extra time because I have 2 more questions, but Alo wanted to say...
Okay, I wanted to say the last words, but then I'll say still the words.
No, don't say last words.
Those are not last words. Those are not last. But it's part to your question also. What I wanted to say is that failures happen, and we have to prepare for the failures. And what I mean by that is that by securing systems, we have to be up to our game every single day, every single attempt. And hacker has to be good at one time. And so we should also consider that failure is not a bad thing. Mistakes happen. We has to learn how to recover from them with a minimal cost. And answer part of your question, is 100 euro lock a good, or thing is like, what's the additional cost? What are we trying to protect? How easily we can recover from it? Is it happening once a year? Is it happening every week that my bicycle is stolen? If you put that data into the same context, we can get the cost of recovery. And I think answer to your question is cost of recovery.
You pass. I no, we haven't passed.
Congratulations, Alo.
It's not no. So what happens at University of Huevda, we have something called the digital parachute competition. Going back to that, so answering your question. And what we do is that in the course, the students are given a pattern. Because I think one of the things we have to do is to get cybersecurity by design into the technological pattern. So they're given a pattern. We know the person who has the pattern. It's a pattern on brain-computer interfaces. As you know, Elon Musk wants to get into this, and I'm always scared when Elon Musk gets into it, etc.
Already get there.
And their job is to do a social technical impact analysis of this interface and try and convince the patent owner that they should have privacy by design and security by design in the actual patent. And that's the issue now. We have to start getting people, and the reason it's called a digital parachute competition is 1905 or whatever, the Wright brothers were on the planes of the Kitty Hawk trying to make this plane fly. As I say, I've been working in this field for about 30 years, and I characterize my job as trying to sell a parachute to the Wright brothers. I worked in these technological companies. They wanted to make the product fly, etc., and I would come in and I'd say, hey, my name is Stuart Kowalski. I'm the product manager for security in Ericsson. Would you like to buy a digital parachute right now? And obviously, as you know, given the situation all today, I didn't do very well at selling digital parachutes for the last 30 years. So the notion is, how do you get people to think about security in the innovation space? So we have to get into the innovators and start influencing the innovators, because that's the problem. Once it's gone past the innovation phase, you develop a product, you try and make it work, and then you try and figure out how to manage it, and by the time you get to the next release, released in Ericsson and on Huawei, you've gone on to the next release, and you don't know how to do this. And how are we going to cut that cycle? How do we get in to build cybersecurity and privacy into the innovation process? So every product should have, like we do in chemical industry, a technological impact analysis. How does this product impact the cybersecurity ecosystem? We need to have that as a statement. The people should know it ahead of time. So we need regulations that do this the same way we do in other industries.
Okay. Okay, now I will continue with my last two questions. And as we are academic persons here, and obviously no meeting shouldn't end without
We're trying to figure that out.
any project idea or whatever.
It's red.
It's somebody hacked. I got an email that the clock is hacked, and somehow it's changed. So Stuart mentioned security system ecosystem, really cool words. What is the biggest challenge or unsolved problem that we as academia must solve quickly? It's still unsolved. What kind of would be like a project idea, whatever, but this is something that needs to be solved quickly. So let's take 3 seconds to think about, and who's brave one can start. Alo.
To me, the biggest challenge is that how to commercialize security, and that's partially what CTF Tech is trying to do. Commercializing security is basically selling trust, and as a small country, Estonia, who will believe us that we are good in things?
Give me an example. Was it like what I asked from Andres Sutt, that it will be like a campaign, putting in posters everywhere, so wear this and that?
No, I think selling trust is basically showing that our products work. For example, if we can build a simulation where we can show them different things, and I think this is where but part of the challenge is like proving that your security solution is good enough for the product. And I think the problem there is that in software you can build a prototype and show it works. Customer is easy, you do the usability test, done. But security is tested by time. It costs more to test the security than to actually do the initial security. And to me, it's basically doing or selling a security, selling a trust. And this is the challenge that I haven't solved yet. Yeah. How to prove the trust in this?
I want to take part, because in Estonia there is one challenge always. Soon there will be elections, and they absolutely are. Some people are against e-elections, but they trust their money into bank. So, Stuart, they don't trust. Yeah, Stuart.
We have a project about trust in electronic voting.
Okay, then good idea.
Two questions. One was the one thing we should do now, or
what is the biggest challenge? What needs to be done quickly? Is it mega game which should be mega super game, or what is your?
Okay, in terms of trust, I go back to that and I get to the next one. Trust but verify. So one of the things we're doing with cyber ranges is we're trying to develop standards. Going back to what you said, it's a problem of time. So beforehand, I worked for governments, and I was doing this big it's called ISO 15408. It's called the Orange Book. We were doing these things. I had to go to Washington and sell Ericsson products and talk to electronic warfare associates. I had to sort of, in Chinese, I had to go prove that this product was secure enough. And the Chinese was fun trying to do that without, etc. Now, one of the ideas you have, Ross Anderson says this, the only way that you know that something's secure is you have motivated intelligence people throwing the product against the wall for a certain amount of time. So basically, that's the only way you can test. So the idea is to have cyber ranges where you say, all right, we have this certified cyber ranges. We have these good hackers that won the competition in Denmark, or the Estonian ones, whatever. They have tested and thrown your product against the wall for 3 days, so you get a standard of 3. These guys have been throwing the product against the wall for 4 days, so you have a standard of 5. Because that's the only way we can actually trust something, is that you've had motivated, educated people testing something and being crash test dummies, as we say, throwing against the wall for a time. So one of the things we need to do is, as Lennon said, trust but verify. We need a verification thing, and I believe the cyber range is the one way we can get verification. So we have to teach people how to throw things against the wall properly.
And when I started to think about this, the first idea that came to my mind is that current moment is very good for cybersecurity. And I'm not sure that always the situation will be so good, so we need to somehow most efficiently to use this type. For example, if not all problems in cybersecurity will be solved, we can face situation. For example, in Lithuania, we have some saying that even if you are hanged up, finally you will be accustomed to be hanged up. So we have probably quite a short moment in time, and we need to use this time as much efficiently as we can.
Yeah, to take away the usability and build more secure systems.
Because in terms of yeah, but it was interesting now. I mean, I won't get into the company. So there's one company that in this Cybercation thing has proposed one of his services, and I don't say which one. The idea is that these hackers are hacking that service as we speak. So he just said, here's my product in this competition. You know about it. I won't say who, because I never know how to do this. Because what happens if they hack it during the competition? Is this product, I won't tell what color, because the product will go down, but it's an idea. I mean, can we use these competitions as, okay, product X has been attempted to be hacked during the Cybercation, whatever event, the Cyber Battle thing you're calling it, whatever? And we had 10 teams hacking it for 6 hours. Would you trust that product more or not?
But it's basically happening. That's the...
I know it's happening now, so I'm saying, so we're doing it now.
That's the payout for the bug bounties. You just raise the stakes a little bit higher, and then everybody starts doing it every single day.
So bug bounties is one thing you can do, right?
Yeah.
Bug bounties, isn't it?
So Elda.
Yeah, I mean, I was while listening, I was thinking that yes, these are all very important, but they all fall in my head in this umbrella of technical security. And we still have the problem of how we transfer these to the industry, you know. We had this project where we looked at the challenges companies have into integrating security as part of their software development processes or as part of their day-to-day business. And there's a bunch of tools out there. There's a bunch of methods. Sometimes they're not aware of those things. Sometimes they are aware of those things, and they tell you why it's so hard to integrate them. So I think this is not a new problem, it's a consistent problem. But if we're having this time and again, perhaps we need to find better ways, newer ways, innovative ways of how to bridge that gap and, I don't know, improve the culture around security. So it's good that we are in this era in which we talk more. We are doing awareness campaigns, but they don't work much. So we have to find another way to transmit these messages or to help them do better. We don't have a solution yet, but I think it's something we need to really invest more.
Maybe it would be also maybe develop awareness game.
There are games as well, and as he said, it works with part of the population.
The other one, so I'm doing this now. I have run exercises in the Swedish cyber range with 4 boards of directors for companies in Sweden. And one of the things we found with the help of Greta, etc., is that before you throw an organization into a cyber range, you have to measure their maturity. Because it's not a good idea to throw a bunch of people into the deep end. So one of the things we have to do first is develop the right measurement. As the minister said, model, measure, then manage. So we need measurements to know what state we are in now. So one of the first things I would propose is we have ways of measuring your maturity. We have ways of, before you're doing that, and then measuring the maturity of the nation, the organization, the institutions, and then developing exercises to meet that maturity.
Thank you, Stuart, for introducing my final question.
Okay, good.
It seems that the meeting yesterday at night pays off. So my question was about this assessment part or measuring. So what and why and how you are measuring something in your country? Because my mind, what is my takeaway from this talk, this academia talk, and how to bond it with the secondary education area? Basically, we are the ones who should help them, and they should help our future students already, so prepare them. So, but question is how and what you are measuring something, but can be labeled as cybersecurity skills. Yeah.
I'll keep answering first. But anyway, so what we developed, of course, was to measure your escalation maturity. If you have a problem, how is that problem dealt with? If you as a citizen, you said before, if you have been a cyber crime committed on you, what do? Do you report it to the police? Do you report it? What do we know the status? What is the maturity of it? How can citizens deal with it? How do the police deal with it? How do organizations deal with it? Because unless we know how people are escalating or dealing with incidents, we don't know how many incidents we actually have. I mean, how many bikes are stolen in Tartu during the year? Then we would know whether it's worth it to put a 1,000 kron lock on a... You can't answer that question unless you know how many bikes are stolen, right? Does everybody know how many bikes? Because if your bike was stolen, would you report it to police in Tartu?
And my colleague's bike was stolen last week, so I know at least one.
Did he report it?
No, on obviously public Facebook, police Facebook is one of the best way how to report it.
So one of the ways is to look at, okay, have you had a cyber something affect you, and have you reported it to somebody who should be doing something about it? And if they're not reporting this stuff, then the politicians, everybody else doesn't know what's going on.
But does it mean, okay...
That's how we're doing it.
Okay, but let's say, without us, allow Elda...
One of the problems I see, what we need to develop, at least among some, maybe politicians, but other public figures, it is still by them considered as a shame to acknowledge that they had some problems in cybersecurity. And even if they will face such case, they will try to hide this, because this is not very good for their reputation. And we need to change this somehow. That this is not a shame. This is a problem, but not a shame.
Yeah, this is... I can confirm it is the same landscape. Perhaps there are companies that are coming forward, but of course without wanting to know, to release their identity. So we get some data from this governmental body that I said that is looking into the cybersecurity challenges. And then ourselves, the way we're measuring is actually by going and working with companies or investigating the company practices.
But you're not collecting some data from your national level or national level or school level or university students, something about what can be labeled as cybersecurity skills or something?
The national level data is coming primarily from this governmental body because they have the contacts. Yeah. They have these big database of people and people respond to them. We as university do not have the same reach out, to be fair. Yeah.
Okay.
In Estonia, we have the RIA doing the really good work. They give us situation reports daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So they tell us what's happening in the digital society, basically. And this is a state-funded, somewhat really good reports if you're interested about what's happening in wide area. One of our supporters, Cybercation, actually does a really good cyber hygiene tests that you have pre-test, you have in the middle the training part, and then the after test. It takes about 90 minutes to complete for a regular Joe. I did mine in 45, but yeah, but they didn't allow me into the university system anymore, even though I was the one who helped to make the questions. So yeah, security. But yeah. And third of all, we have really good examples in Estonia. If you're interested, ask more specifically, like a Cyberpuuring, which is like, I don't know even how to translate it, but in collaboration with TalTech, we have a lot of tests for a different level of students in schools that Birgi Lawrence is a really good scientist from TalTech who's doing a lot of this kind of educational system measurements. So if you're interested about how to measure some particular parts of the security, I can't say it's a general security, but particular parts, we already have good examples in Estonia.
You know that the ITU 2020 International Telegram Union does have a ranking of the different countries by cybersecurity capabilities. You know about those ones or not, no?
I've heard it, yeah.
But it's hard to say if these rankings are good or not. I don't know. Norway was 17, I think. What do you know what Estonia is? No, you don't know?
I don't remember.
But they always have this thing, the governments are saying, how digital society, you guys keep selling that's the most digital society are, so it'd be good to know. So how digitally secure is Estonia? Oh, I have a hand up. No. No.
Now it's better? Yeah, okay. I know that Tõnu Tammer was saying a couple of weeks ago when there was RIA event that Estonia is quite high on the cybersecurity level, and Estonia is a little bit standing out that we are in a good position of the freedom of speech and cybersecurity at the same time. And also to add some of the things that Alo said, also statistical Amet, I don't know how to say it in English, also asking like in regular questionnaires each year, like what families are doing for their cybersecurity, so we have this kind of data as well.
So the bottom line I'm saying is to get data before we start doing stuff, rather having evidence-based policy rather than opinion-based policy.
In Estonia, I have a feeling we have data, now we need funding to actually process it. And that's where the policymakers and hopefully the president soon will come here to treat us and give us money.
Soon, let's take this question because he's coming already soon. We have to,
Do I have time to ask
please,
one?
As a question.
Ask one quick question. It is a question about cybersecurity education in the future. So there is a huge need for cybersecurity specialists in the future. And this is a global problem. So I am interested about in your countries and in your universities, have you taken this into account? And if you have, how are you taking in this account? And how this problem could be solved in the future?
So who wants to start?
She can start. That's it.
Yeah. If I understood the question correctly, you're asking about the importance of cybersecurity as a specialization and having more cybersecurity specialists, how we're doing this. So currently at ITU, we're having a specialization of security out of the regular computer science programs. And as I said, we have this other master in software design where they also have another specialization. Now we are thinking of having a master in cybersecurity, but of course you don't want to add yet another master, so we're trying to be cautious about this thing, what it means, what it entails, what kind of curriculum you want to have. So this is what's cooking right now in our university. And what we're trying to do, though, is really establish a curriculum that can be opening up different career paths in industry, because we have this information center for security and trust. It's CSAT. We have a whole center, but the heavy bulk of the group is people from hardcore security, cryptography. Like I'm the only security requirements engineer, so I work more with compliance and regulatory stuff. Then we have a person on usable security, so we're thinking what other profiles we need so that we offer a more complete curriculum in cybersecurity. And this is the process we're going through right now to deal with.
Thank you. So let's close it up. Do you want that? Quick, we can have it continue the discussion soon anyway, so
we can continue.
yeah. But yeah, my takeaway is kind of it's not easy to have this panel discussion in academic person, because I have like four different tracks in my head now. So basically, I have to tailor them up and summarize them up, and so it's. But anyway, it was really interesting discussion. So thank you for audience to having questions. So. Thank you very much, and we will continue.
Let's build some more bricks.
Yeah, let's build the bricks. Exactly, this will be a motto.
Exactly,
I will make a T-shirt for this, and brick building T-shirt. So, so thank you, Elda.
Networking and knowledge sharing has been great. Thank you.
Okay, but we'll have So. Yeah, it's kind of closing at the moment, I think. Thank you. So, I'm still on air, online. So,